sounds like the best way.
All right.
Just the normal, this is a better place to go. This was the-
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of Tuesday, July 23rd, 2013. Our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilor Kotkin, could you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madam Town Clerk.
Counselor Drake,
Here.
Counselor Hurley,
Here.
Counselor Kotkin,
Here.
Counselor Manousos will be late, Counselor McAllister,
Here.
Counselor Montanari,
Here.
Counselor Roberts, Deputy Mayor Council,
Present.
and Chairperson Hemmon.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get into public comment, I just wanted to make a comment. We lost a very influential citizen over the past week in Dr. Phil Sale. Dr. Sale served in World War II. He was a local dentist who many of us in town went to for many years. He was elected to the first town council and served there for 4 terms, and he was mayor from 1960 to 62. And he and Felix Babel also co-sponsored the Weathersfield Citizens Scholarship Foundation, now better known as Dollars for Scholars, who have raised over $1 million to give out to Weathersfield residents who are going on to school. So we send our condolences to the family. Thank you. Public comment. We have no hearings. Are there members of the public wishing to speak? Mr. Rue?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. George A. Rue, 956 Cloverdale Circle. Fortunately, I found out the meeting wasn't being held at its regular time. I almost came last night, and then I found out it was today. But I've been busy with some little friend that I have these days. Just as an aside, postponing the meeting, in my opinion, these are my thoughts, for the convenience of a vendor at the expense of inconvenience in the citizenry, is a little, bit speech is kind of a move. It's unusual, in my opinion, to say the very least, at least from my memory. I want to comment on the radio system. At the recent council meeting, I did comment on various aspects of what the town is proposing to do for approximately $3.8 million. I thought it ought to go to referendum. I expressed those thoughts. Will it go? I'm not too sure. Oh, is that the one that works there? Oh, what does this one do?
Light.
Oh, that's a light. Oh, well. You see, I'm really very up to date on modern technology. I did feel it should go to referendum. Whether it will or won't, I seriously doubt whether it will, but that's still my opinion. To me, it foretells a direction that the town seems to be going in that I'm not particularly enthused about, and nor are others. I think I referenced Eisenhower's comments relative to being cautious about the military-industrial complex. I expressed my perceptions that all the bells and whistles in in the stress of problems may not be, or may be beyond the capabilities of people that are fighting fires and doing all kinds of tough stuff. I did not quarrel with the need that something may have to be done, and I'm not going to quarrel with that need tonight. But a question that I have is, do we have to spend $3.8 million in order to accomplish the objectives that you have? I had some interesting experiences of late. Some friends shared experiences with me, and I thought I'd share them with you for what they say, for what the thoughts are. And as you would know me well, I'm always suggesting that you think your way through projects and problems, vis-a-vis just, boom, knee-jerk stuff to do something. This gentleman said to me, Weathersfield seems intent on spending $3.8 million. And the discussion went on from there. But the word was the intent. It's like, you got to do it. He mentioned to me a company by the name of Marcus Communications, or Marcus, I don't know, somewhere in the area, a Connecticut company, as I understand, that apparently has many qualifications that might fill the bill here. He did mention also, and I was not aware of this at the time, but I did a little research since, that there are installations by this particular company in various towns in the area in Connecticut. And being a Connecticut company with, I don't know how many employees, but it sounds like a good idea to be exploring. And the other thing was the cost was significantly lower. And again, I don't know about the details, but the difference between what I read and what I saw subsequently in a paper and what we're talking about is it's a big pile of money. Another person I spoke with, and again, he approached me, he talked about, and he was a local Weathersfield resident with a fair number of contacts in town. And he didn't quarrel with the need for something to be done, just as I have not quarreled with the need for something to be done. But he brought up a very interesting perspective, and again, maybe you're doing all this stuff, maybe you're not doing any of it, I really don't know, but I share these thoughts for whatever they're worth. He saw an opportunity to work with another town. He specifically mentioned Rocky Hill, I don't know, good, bad, or otherwise, to see if a joint venture on updating a radio system that would go beyond the town of Weathersfield and might result in a lower unit cost for each of the towns involved. Again, a thought, something to think about if it's not too late. I don't know whether it is. But one of the other things that he thought, which was very interesting, and I did not probe him, he volunteered this stuff. This gentleman I have high regard for, he's a highly educated man. He did not believe that local officials, from the council to the manager to the police and various other departments, are not really or would not be receptive to the type of cooperation that might dilute some of their authority or your authority in this venture in our town. Again, I don't know, something to think about. It's conjecture, but at least it was an interesting perspective. There were a couple of recent New York Times articles that did catch my attention, and they dealt with the large military contracts, chasing contractors, chasing dollars to lower governmental entities, towns, states, and whatever. And again, with the cutback in defense spending, the towns are logical targets. Again, I would share just a couple of thoughts that came to my mind as I read the articles and highlighted them and marked them. They were talking about Homeland Security, specifically on one article, but they were pressured into buying a lot more equipment than they had personnel to operate it, and it sat idle, basically. It sat idle. What it suggested to me was some arm of government buying something they maybe really didn't need, or if they did, they had too many bells and whistles, but the thing was not exploited to its utmost capabilities. A word of caution as you deal on this particular issue. In that same article, cell and other towers and related equipment did not work as were predicted. I mean, it's one thing to say it's going to work, it's going to be perfect. It's another thing to have it happen. And we unfortunately have the sad experience of having purchased a system that didn't function. A spokesman also stated recently regarding the project, he said, "We frankly weren't smart enough." The suggestion was they really didn't know what questions to ask. And when you're dealing with people that are dealing in bazillions of dollars and high levels of government, and they come to some local town, you may be outgunned. I'd like to think that you're not, but you may very well be. So again, I urge caution. Critics often say, and again, this was part of the same article, there are things to think about. And these are things that I observe too, here in town. Government often is too fixated on high-tech solutions. The high-tech solution is going to solve all of our problems. And maybe there are other alternatives to the things that have to be done. In summary, my counsel, advice, is go slow. The world won't end, and I told you that last time. The world is not going to end if you don't act on this thing tonight. To suggest that it would is a false alternative that personally I don't buy into. Get another or several additional proposals with all of the detailed information per a formal RFP, request for proposal. I'm not up to date on all this jargon you guys use all the time. But again, that makes some kind of sense to me. From what I gathered, and the subsequent article in the paper, it was, you kind of almost decided this is the only company that can do this. And what struck me is the company, according to the newspaper, is a local company. And it would seem to me, if we're dealing and going to spend some amount of money, and I'm sure we're going to spend some, maybe you got to take a look at some local company.
Mr. Wu, can you
I'm
summarize?
almost done. I'm almost done there. Another thought, don't let people wine and dine you too much, and you can take that any damn way you like. Because when that happens, and it does happen, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that in all levels of our government there are levels of interaction that are not in the best interests of the citizenry of this country, in my opinion. And unfortunately, it interferes with good judgment when you get too close to people that is trying to sell you some multi-bazillion-dollar project. And I don't think it should change town council meetings just to make it more convenient for somebody who wants to sell us $3 million worth of stuff.
That's not why the meeting was changed.
Well, be that as it may. The perception, one of the things I learned, Mayor, one time, is perception is reality. And a vice president of the Travelers told me that. And that's true. What people perceive in town, maybe we don't always know why you're doing what you're doing. But this is what people believe, and if I'm wrong, and I'm sorry. But I said what I said. My advice again tonight is tabling. Give it some more thought. Think about it. Think about the impact it's going to have on a town. Think about the money that the state doesn't have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. Other members of the public wishing to speak? In the back? Yep.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jeffrey Galen, and I'm a tax-paying resident of Weathersfield. I have a business on the
Jeff,
Berlin
can you
Turnpike.
speak into the?
Sure.
Thank you.
I have a business on the Berlin Turnpike, electronic service business. Although I don't do two-way communications, I'm quite familiar with it. I'm an electrical engineer, and I have a degree from UConn in communications, as in radios. And I know Mr. Marcus that they're talking about. I've known him for my whole life. We grew up together. Here as a resident, when I read the article in the Current, I emailed it to Bruce. He emailed back to me, probably surprised that I saw it, because I don't always read the paper, but I think I got it from Mr. Young. Someone here from the town emailed me. And I was really quite surprised that a decision with that much money involved in this town would just go unchallenged. I don't know Harris Company. I know only Marcus Company because I know him well from the area, and like I said, I'm quite familiar with him. I just think, like the previous gentleman said, you have to revisit this. I really think you need competition. And it would be nice to use a local company, although there might be others in the area that do similar, that can compete and do the same thing. I don't know much about the radio system that the town is using now. I only know from the past, from years ago, the disaster that Motorola was going through with this town all those years, with their continuing expense of contracts and licensing. And I don't know if you're going to be doing the same thing with Harris, but the initial amount of money that you're going to spend is one thing, and then the continuous amount of money that you're going to spend on maintenance service is another, that you really have to look into. So my suggestion is, like the previous gentleman, don't be brash, don't just jump at this decision. I think that you may need other experts other than the one that you hired to look into this. Just make it a competitive bid, make it worthwhile for the town. Because if there's $1 million difference between Marcus and Harris Company, what's the $1 million difference? I don't think this town, I pay taxes, you pay taxes. I don't think that we need to spend unnecessarily. And yes, we want to get this new radio system. I'm sure all the police and fire want that, no doubt about that. That's all in fine, but I think it should be done at the right price and certainly good equipment. A local company sounds like a good idea to me too, because I know that Marcus gives 24-hour service. That means that if you have any kind of failure, which is going to happen with all electronics, he can be here nearly immediately. And I read something that he gave me about a bond performance. That means that if it doesn't work, you don't pay. So it sounds like kind of like a risk-free situation. Not that Harris doesn't do that, I don't know. But revisit this, really. Does someone to speak here, do you have to be a town resident? Can I introduce Mr. Marcus to tell further about the reasons why it should be a competitive bid?
He can come up and speak.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you listening to me, and I hope that the town makes the right decision spending our money.
Thank you. Other members of the public wishing to speak? Mr. Colantonio, and then in the back.
Good evening. Gas Colantonio, 16 Morrison Avenue. This is kind of nice to see the police being represented and also the engineering department, because I'm going to talk about, again, my stop sign. Or accountability and fairness in government. When Morrison Avenue neighborhood was developed back in the 1900s, it was envisioned to be a residential street with minimum traffic, and it was never meant to connect to Silas Deane Highway. Right-of-way for Morrison Avenue never connected to Silas Deane before 1955. It was a residential street connected to Tifton Road, Ireland Street, and Orchard Street. The original plan showed that Tifton Road would be connected to Church Street. The front setback was said to be 30 feet, and the developer had a vision of a close-knit neighborhood, never connecting to Silas Deane. That's the way I see it. As you can see, at that time, Morrison Avenue did not have any through traffic connecting Walker Hill Road to Silas Deane Highway. Now, as a result of past town decisions, Morrison Avenue has an average daily traffic of 730 cars. Hillcrest Avenue has an average daily traffic of 365 cars. And yet, the town and the police department does not see anything wrong with this unfair situation. Let me compare the two streets again, and keep in mind that before 1955, there was no through traffic on Morrison Avenue. Morrison Avenue and Hillcrest Avenue are two streets adjacent and parallel to each other and connect Walker Hill Road to Silas Deane. The pavement on Morrison Avenue is 24 feet wide, and in certain locations it's less. Hillcrest Avenue is 30 feet wide. Morrison Avenue has a 3-foot grass strip and a 4-foot sidewalk on both sides of the street. East of Orchard, the grass strip varies from no grass strip and a mountable curb in front of house number 26 and a 2 feet on the opposite side to a varying width from the rest to the Silas Deane. Hillcrest Avenue has an average of 15 feet wide grass strip. The distance from the curbing to the front of the houses is 35 for Morrison Avenue, 60 for Hillcrest. Now, the DOT manual on the intersection side distance shows that the required distance for 25 miles per hour is 280 feet. That means on a level road. This one is 6% in the vicinity of Tifton. For 30 miles per hour, the distance is 335. Now, the police department has determined, along with the town officials, that nothing be done regarding the installation of a stop sign on Morrison Avenue. or removing the stop sign at the intersection of Orchard and Hillcrest Avenue. Remember, the town has taken measurement, and the intersection side distance for Orchard at Hillcrest is 344 to the east and 970 feet to the west. And on Tifton Road, the intersection side distance is 232 feet. 232 feet. For 20 miles per hour, it's required 280. The intersection side distance on Orchard and Morrison Avenue looking east is 290 feet. And as the police department has stated, that looking east at this intersection, a white picket fence obstructs the sight line, and this is why the stop sign is needed in the westerly direction, which is fine, I agree. Again, 290 feet side distance need a stop sign, but 232 feet on Tifton, you do not need a stop sign. I don't know why that is. Notice that Tifton Road connects to Morrison Avenue less than 200 feet east of Orchard. Not counting the stop sign on Walker Hill Road and Silas Dean, Morrison Avenue has one stop sign and Hillcrest Avenue has two. Figure that out. One intersection, two stop signs for Hillcrest Avenue. Two intersections, one stop sign for Morrison Avenue. The most unsafe location on Morrison Avenue is between Orchard and Tifton. The sidewalk is adjacent to the road with a mountable curbing, and only 2 feet separation to the north between the road and sidewalk. The decision of doing nothing, I do not understand. On Morrison Avenue, the police department does not want to install the stop sign because they do not want to create an inconvenience to the public traveling Walker Hill Road to Silas Dean, and because the traffic is not enough to warrant the stop sign. I don't understand that. We do not have enough traffic on Morrison Avenue, and Hillcrest Avenue has less. They have enough. I want to quote Lieutenant Andrew Powers' memo to Chief James Citran on April 25, 2007, where he explained the 85th percentile. The speed indicates the speed that most motorists, anyway, in brief, the speed on Morrison Avenue is 31 miles per hour. That's too high for a residential street. Another thing, to my knowledge, the only place in town where stop signs are located in one direction and not the other are at Walker Hill Road, in the vicinity of Bliss Market, Main Street and Hartford Avenue, and Morrison Avenue and Orchard Street. At Walker Hill Road and Main Street, just below the sign, there is an additional sign stating, oncoming cars do not stop. Oncoming cars do not stop. Do we need a similar sign at Morrison Avenue? Remember that someone has lost a life crossing Walker Hill Road last year. Do we want the same thing to happen on Morrison Avenue? Do you think there is something wrong when you need another sign to explain the meaning of the sign on the same post? After attending many meetings, I have come to the conclusion that the town is non-responsive and does not care to the fairness and quality of life of the residents, and I would like to request the State Traffic Commission for a second opinion regarding the safety of the street. The stop sign on Hillcrest Avenue and the lack of the stop sign on Morrison Avenue is the reason why the average daily traffic on Morrison Avenue is double than the one on Hillcrest Avenue. I'm going to ask again, if any of you lived on Morrison Avenue, would I get that stop sign? And if a policeman did not live on Hillcrest Avenue, would they still have two stop signs that are not needed on that street? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Colantonio. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Town Council, thank you for your time to speak. My name is Bruce Marcus. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Marcus Communications, a company located in Manchester, Connecticut. We're 45 years in business this April, doing public safety and other communication systems around the state. We currently maintain radio systems for the entire town of East Windsor, Meriden Police, Weston Police, Town of Manchester Police, Fire, Public Works, all those systems, and many more, Rensterfield, XL Center. We've been installing systems and helping police departments and public safety including Weathersfield PD years ago when they had a jamming problem. As a volunteer, I solved the problem with Chief Citran. In fact, he was the arresting officer of the guy we went after. We represent lots of manufacturers, but our most important thing is we represent our customers. If it's not right, we don't care who the vendor is, we'll make it right, because my name is on the building. We're a local company. We currently have 25 employees in building. We just moved into a new 35,000 square foot facility in Manchester, which is state-of-the-art. It's one of the top 1% facilities in the country. Our CFO, Mike Bull, is here. When we found out that this was on the street and Harris was proposing a system here, we contacted the town fathers and we tried to get an audience to offer a counter proposal from one of our vendors, that being Tate Communications. Tate Communications has more radios in the state of Connecticut in public safety than Harris has. Over 3,000, almost 4,000. 2,000 alone in the Connecticut prison system of recent installations, and that's 800 megahertz. They chose it because of its toughness and ruggedness. That wasn't my sale, it was from another dealer. There are over 800 radios in police cars in the state on the state interoperability system that the state chose to buy, Tate. Meriden PD has a Tate simulcast system, although not trunked, with over 200 portables in their police and 100 mobile radios in 10 base station sites, 10 base stations at 5 sites of simulcast. The difference between trunked and non-trunked is the software. They can be trunked very easily, and they're considering that. That system has been in for 3 years, flawless, and is encrypted. Your system needs to be replaced? Yes. When we contacted Trot Communications, who Ray Trot, the founder of the business, is a friend of mine in the Radio Club of America. We're both fellows. His engineer didn't give us the full facts and the material. We wanted to know a material list so we could bid it. Quite frankly, we found that list tonight on the website. Our CFO went through it and updated our numbers to match toe-to-toe. At a toe-to-toe price, we're $2.5 million. We're still $1 million less, and our ongoing costs is a lot less than that of Harris to maintain the system. We are a local company. We are responsive. P25 is a standard put out by the Associated Police Communications officials. Tate has installed many trunk systems in partnership with Cassidian, who is the European Aerospace and Defense Systems name for the company that installs in the U.S. their system. Tate has private labeled some of the equipment that they've installed trunked. Unlike Harris, none of the Tate systems have been withdrawn. I gave you reference to articles that Tate had to withdraw or was canceled in New York State for $2 billion of a system. Melbourne, Florida, in Pennsylvania, Oakland, California, they had a failure when the president was visiting. It took them 24 hours to fix the system. None of my vendors have had that kind of experience or that kind of exposure. They haven't had a system pulled out. If you look at the reference materials on the web, you'll find that Harris has been pulled out of lots of multi-million-dollar systems, not unlike the experience you've had with Motorola, and Motorola's had large failures. None of the Tate systems have failed. There's a bunch of Tate systems across Massachusetts now, Waltham, Mass. A lot of the towns up there in Plymouth County now have a lot of Tate equipment. South Windsor and Vernon PD are using Tate equipment in a mixture of open P25 systems. So there's a lot of it around. It's very stable. The company's headquartered in Houston, and in fact, a lot of the engineers over there have recently jumped ship from Harris, and they're over at the Tate side. So I would just like equal chance to compete. I would like to go down the material list, supply a proposal. Like I said to Jeffrey and other people, there's a bid bond system, guarantees the performance of the system. If not, you have the money to go build it again. But my reputation, like I say to people, my name is on the door. There's nobody named Harris, okay? I live in Connecticut. The consultant lives in Texas. My reputation is here. My name is on the door. My company is local people. We perform, and we perform above the vendor. Whenever there's a vendor problem, I stand in front of you, responsible to you to make it work. And if you check with Windsor and some of the other towns, or Matt Reed, the chief in South Windsor, who is on the legislative liaison to the state legislature from the Connecticut Chiefs of Police, you can ask them our reputation. All our police chiefs speak highly about us. They're our best salespeople. So I will close with that. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer any questions. I'm sure this is a very convoluted project for you. I know the police and fire want new radios. I questioned when we were looking at it, the consultants asked for intrinsically safe radios for every department in the town. That means that they can go into an explosive atmosphere. I don't think the public works and the police go into explosive atmospheres. You need that for your firefighters. You don't need it for every radio in town. And I don't know if the citizens know, the average price of a Harris radio is $3,000 in this proposal. Look at your iPhone and see what you get for $699. And say to yourself, what does that Harris radio give you for $3,000? Our stuff always is usually 1/3 to 1/2 the competitors. In Meriden, we were 800,000 on an open RFP. We came in at 1.8 million for all that equipment I described. Motorola was $800,000 higher, and with only 2 sites and 4 receive sites. And when they chose us, Motorola came back and said, "Why do you choose Tate?" And the head of communications in Meriden said, "I can give you 800,000 reasons first, because we found the equipment comparable and the warranty just as good." Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Marcus. Other members of the public wishing to speak? Mr. Young?
Good evening, Robert Young, 20 Copper Mill Road. I came to speak about this this police fire radio system also tonight. I'd like to urge you to, as Mr. Rue said, table it. And I say table it or vote no on it. First of all, I attended the meetings back 10, 12 years ago when they were talking about buying the current system. And there was a lot of people that spoke against it. And again, the town council, as arrogant as they were, went ahead and voted in favor of it. And now, but did you have a problem? I don't know. And this is what it all boils down to. During the startup, you had some problems until you got it ironed out. It was fine. During town council meetings, I recall once when it was mentioned, and it was discussed, and it was mentioned that the one and only time that they had a problem with that system was, it was an anomaly. After all, when you think about the hundreds and thousands of messages that are going through that system in the course of a day, in a week, in a month, in a year, and many years, and you get 1 or 2 anomalies, I don't think an anomaly is reason enough to throw the system away and go spend $3.5 million. And the word anomaly was not my word, it was one of your town council members at that time who used it numerous times that night. But also along the way, I have yet, over the last couple weeks, I've come across maybe 3 or 4 or 5 articles now on the police station radio system. Yet, I don't recall seeing articles at all in the paper over the last 10 years saying the radio system at the police station broke down and there's dire problems going on there. I haven't seen a thing. I haven't seen any press releases. I went and looked through minutes of the town of Wethersfield online, looking and searching for anything regarding the radio system where it was mentioned. Only that one time I found it. I don't know why you're saying it's such a bummer of a system. I don't know why you want to spend $3.5 million. $3.5 million that we don't have, because we have to finance it, and the current system that we have, we still owe 10 years worth of payments on that too, roughly speaking. And then again, How much revenue has come in from the radio, the cell tower, from all the different radio the companies that buy space on there? How much money have we collected over the last 10 years on that? I saw a couple numbers the last couple of years where it was like $225, $250, $265,000 in the course of a year. Extrapolate that by 10 years. You should have at least $2.5 million sitting in that account for the purchase of a system someday. Yet you say, we're going to finance the whole darn thing. Where is this money, Mayor? You know, I can go on about turf as well. We spent $1.2 million on turf, and how much money have we collected? I asked the town manager, I'm still waiting. And I hope he calls me soon and lets me come in and look at the data. But the fact remains, we've collected a lot of money from carriers for the tower business, for the communications business. And I don't hear where we're taking that money and putting it up front and then financing whatever the remainder is, if we have to, with this to replace a 10-year-old system. And let's not forget, 10 years ago, the town council that approved the purchase of this was the Democrats. 8 people voted yay for that system. The 9th person wasn't there, and that was a Democrat. A year later, or whatever it was, a whole new group came in, different party, ended up running the council, and they went through the process with the radio system. They were happy with it, obviously, because I know reading earlier, they were saying, well, if the system doesn't work, we're not going to pay for it. And there was some assurances that that we weren't going to pay for it if it didn't work. And the same party that then became majority, was because the minority guy, a Republican, was making those statements, and after the election, that group became the majority. They ended up signing off with Motorola and paying them, or whatever in the world they did. But the fact remains, it was the Republicans that approved it. So we got the Democrats that made the purchase and pushed it through, even though lots of citizens came up and says, don't buy it, keep the existing system. And it was the Republicans. More than half of you were Republicans. It was your party that approved that radio system, the one that we currently have, and went forward with it. And, as I've heard, we had budget restraints. We realized that there was some articles, some issues missing here. Why didn't you go out and buy whatever the issue was, whatever the part was at that time, and get the system working? It wasn't a budget restraint. You bought the machine, you bought the system without a budget referendum. So it only took 5 of you here to pass a budget to buy whatever component you needed to make that system back then work. And you didn't do it. And it went on for years and years. You never did it, which tells me there was nothing wrong with this system. So I don't understand why you're all hepped up on buying a new system. It was only a month ago in this other room, right behind the wall here, where the woman from Harris or wherever she was from, she was looking to sign a contract that night with you folks. And you said no. But you led her to believe. And that's wrong. Now you have some other people. Now this went out as a, what's the word that they use? I can't remember it anymore, and I can't see it in my notes, but it's for bid, request for proposal. What I'm reading in the paper was there was no request for proposal. Request for bid is to try to get the word out, this is what we want. These are what the components we want, and bid on it. Now, Mr. Marcus, who I have no idea who he is, who was just up here. Yes, I'll wrap it up. He's in the business of the radios. If Wethersfield had troubles with their radio system, he would have known about it through his contacts. Yet, he got through some email. That's the only way he found out that we had a problem, because we didn't have a problem. Thank you very much, Mayor.
you,
And I
Mr.
hope
Young.
you vote, I hope you table it or vote no. We can't afford spending money. We can't afford to make payments on 2 radio systems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Other members of the public wishing to speak? Yes. I wasn't sure if that was you, Mr. Martino.
Tony Martino, 374 Highland Street. During the budget process, I asked you to think outside of the box, and tonight that's what I'm going to do, ask you to think outside the box. I'm all in favor of trying to do everything possible to get everything done with the high school renovation. I look at the bids that have come out, and it looks like the economy's turning around, and it's going to cost us more for materials and for construction costs. Consequently, we got to find some other ways to pay for some of this. And what my thoughts were maybe you just put through something where if there's money left over at the year, the board can hang on to that money in a contingency. Maybe they could save some of that money to pay for some of those costs. Also, let's look at some of the small items in there, and let's see if we can put those on next year's capital improvement budget to grab some money to pay for those. Between all that, if maybe we can come up with enough, we can do everything we have to. Because I don't want to see what happened with Webb, where everything got done but all the windows, and they're still not done, and the cost keeps escalating. So let's see if we can find some ways to find other money to put into this and get that whole project done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Martino. Other members of the public wishing to speak? Mr. Segas?
Lee Seekis, 117 Wells Road. I'm just going to mention this because it's been a pain for me sometimes. And it deals with a stop sign, like our good neighbor Gus here has. Now, the distance between the sidewalk and the street belongs to the town or the property, the town or the state. Well, going to Puritan Furniture, right next to that driveway that goes into the Hartford Medical Building. There's a bank on the left. There's no stop sign there. Cars have almost hit me twice. And I'm saying stop signs are important in many places, not just on Morrison, or stop signs are important. And so I want to say that public safety is the reason for stop signs. And the reasons there is for safety. And if cars go through a stop sign, they should be ticketed. Because really, if our citizens knew and obeyed the law because they had to pay a fine, and especially when I've been told by an officer or two, we don't fine some people because that might take away the grocery money for a week. That's not teaching people the law. That makes people more disobedient to the law, and that helps deteriorate our society. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sekas.
Thanks.
Are there other members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on to council. Sorry.
Oh, David Karuk, 149 Broad Street. I wasn't planning on saying anything. I heard Gus talk about his stop sign, which I've heard for many months, and I think it's gone on deaf ears. And now I heard Mr. Seekis support him. Well, I support Gus as well. Now, Gus has talked about a lot of he's used a lot of technical jargon, and he was an engineer, and he talks about distance and speed, and he compares it to other streets, and that clearly does not make a difference to anybody. But what I'm saying is, how hard is it to put a stop sign up? It doesn't seem like a big deal. Gus puts up very good arguments on why he should have a stop sign. I think I think putting up a stop sign is not a very costly or a big issue. And I read his speech, and seems to me like he has a legitimate argument there. And I support him, and that's all I can say. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Krug. Other members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on to council reports. Do any councilors have reports of committees? Okay. Through the Conservation Commission, just wanted to pass along, there was a public hearing held in Glastonbury in regards to the bikeway on the Putnam Bridge during that construction, and there is information that they handed out. They informed the town, both Glastonbury and Weathersfield, the options that were available. If anybody would like to see it, I do have a copy, and I know that the copy is available through Park and Recreation and maybe in the library as well. How about council report, or council comments? Councilor Drake and then Councilor Roberts.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment. The reason we changed the meeting tonight wasn't for the radio system, it was to accommodate the high school building project for their schedule and for the bids. That's the only reason we made the change, so. No, I said that's why we're trying to help them out and keep it moving, so.
Councilor Roberts?
Yes, I went last week to the press conference that the police department had on the new emergency electronic manual that's in all the cruisers now, which provides all sorts of emergency data for the police officer who might be responding to an emergency in a school system. It's got the evacuation plan, overhead of the neighborhood, perimeter staging area, all sorts of information. And I think I just want to compliment the chief and his staff and the superintendent of schools, Mike Emmett, and also retired Lieutenant Tom Dillon, because they've been working on this for a couple of years now, and they finally pulled it all together. And this is a tremendous resource for the town, and I think parents of school children should be very happy that this information is all accessible now to the police officer, the first responders. And it covers all our schools plus Corpus Christi and Capital Region, the correct facilities.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Just to add to what Councilor Roberts said on the emergency manual, I had asked the town manager to have a public safety committee meeting so we could vet all this and ensure that everything is there and we haven't missed anything. I think it's a great job. And yet another gold star to the police department and all the people that worked on that. I greatly appreciate it. Chief, thank you very much, and to your staff on that. In addition, once again, the Weathersfield Police act in a very appropriate manner in the police chase, and it was in the paper last week of the two people that they captured with the stolen car and how that all came down. And once again, another gold star for the police department and also the East Hartford Police Department. They did another great job, and I know I received a lot of calls from people praising the police department that they feel very safe in town. So thank you, Chief, and all your men that are here tonight. It's unfortunate that I received a call from the owner of Carmen Anthony's that was a pretty four-star restaurant that was in the area that has closed up, and it's unfortunate for the town, and I'm hoping that the town redevelopment agency could help find another high-end type of restaurant to go in there. Unfortunately, the person that was there, as I spoke to Mr. Anthony, actually, just in the month of June alone, he lost $36,000, and over a 4-year period with the way the economy was, his sales were down over $1 million. So he really did try to keep the place open. The food was very good. The atmosphere was very nice. It's just unfortunate that we have yet another empty building in Weathersfield. So I would hope that we, keep on this and see if we can get something else in there, because at this point, Weathersfield has no high-end restaurant that I could think of. I received some calls about tree trimming that CL&P is doing in the area. And I have to say, I know they have to keep their lines, their power lines free from tree limbs, but if anyone drives north on Ridge Road from Wells Road to Knott Street, the job they did on those trees, along with Church Street actually, is deplorable. They should have taken the entire tree down. where they had some very beautiful trees that were in very good shape. There's nothing but a half a tree left, and it makes the entire road look shabby. So perhaps we should get a hold of CLMP and maybe go back and view the whole area, especially Ridge Road, and perhaps those trees, the remaining half a tree should probably come down, and maybe some new trees planted to make up for that. But at this point, it looks disastrous. I mean, I've seen better streets in the north end of Hartford than what they've done to this. So, Mr. Manager, I'd ask that you reach out to CLMP and see if they can come by and send some people by and take a look at that. Street paving, I know Mr. Turner's here tonight, and I received a memo of the streets that have to be paved, and I'm hoping that you have a report for me tonight about Ivy Lane. I've been getting quite a few complaints. I know last year, if I remember correctly, that was a C- street, and I think it's gone to probably a D or less. In this past week, there's been 2 more cave-ins on the street, one at the top of the street and one in the center of the street. There's not much of a road left, and the cap that was put on the road back in 1969 is just about deteriorated. So I don't understand how some of these other streets in here, and I understand they have to be paved, and I rode most of these streets that are in the paving area, and some of these are in far better shape than Ivy Lane is. So I would like to know if someone could again go out there and really assess it. I think it needs a viewing, not just a computer program, but there's really not much left of the street at all. So I would appreciate that if you can maybe talk tonight about it, or maybe next meeting come back and give a report on that to see what we can do. And finally, I had the opportunity to sit in the week previous on the revitalization of the old Weathersfield plan for Comstock Ferry, the Belden House, and the old Masonic Temple. And this is just the Reader's Digest version of the proposal of the facts and information that was given to see what can be done there. It's a very inclusive plan. Unfortunately, all these buildings are privately owned. Many of the people that were here were from the old Weathersfield, plus other parts of town. Even the minister, Pastor Derek from the First Church, when I spoke to him about the use of his parking lot, he was never aware that this plan included using his parking lot. I personally think this was a $50,000 waste of money. And to do a report like this for privately owned buildings was just, to me, it was great for the architect that did it, and for the director of the planning company that did it. Like I said, it was very comprehensive, but I just think that for the amount of money we spent, yes, it was a grant, but it was grant money that I don't think was spent properly for the town, especially when they want to move the original site for the meeting house, part of the plan. I know there's going to be other talk about that, but moving the original site of the rock where the meeting house is, and the flagpole in the center of Old Weathersfield, to me, is just a travesty for what goes on there. And that's about it. Thank you.
Any other council comments? Just have a couple communications. We received a letter from the Hartford Marathon. They will be sponsoring an event Sunday, August 25th, a 5K and a 10K. We have a letter from Mr. Woodrow Warren in regards to some failure to respond to alarms. If anybody would like to see that, I have that as well. And we did receive from the Japan consulate in Boston, some more information from Japan, and I will make sure that this goes to the library with the rest of the information that has been received.
Mayor, I know when you have a meeting coming up on planning
Correct.
for that, and you might want to make sure that Ted Schroll's involved, because a few years ago you had a Japanese delegation here, firefighters in town, so and the fire department should be involved, and they've already have contacts with people in Japan, so I think they should be involved.
We'll add them to the list. Thank you. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple items that were questions at the last meeting. There's a memo on the podium tonight that has some additional information on tonight's agenda and answers to these two questions. There was some discussion at the last meeting about the reimbursement on the high school project and the ability to reuse those funds when they're reimbursed to the town. Under the state law and under the appropriation ordinance that sets the cap at $74,816 and change, we can only spend the same dollar once. So even if it's reimbursed to us, it's not available for respending. Under the ordinance, any dollar that we get from the state or from a grant source reduces the amount of local money we can spend on the project. So if we were to use the money from the PCB remediation that's reimbursed to us to then build the geothermal, we're in effect doing both, and then another $1.5 million has to be found somewhere else in the budget. The building committee took the step in order to pay for the PCB removal to eliminate the geothermal. We can only spend that same $1.5 million once. So although we get reimbursed for it, it comes off what can be spent on the project. Then there was a question about the tennis courts. Since the geothermal was going to be underneath the tennis courts, now that we're not doing the geothermal, do we have to change out or reconstruct the tennis courts? The town has spent $43,000 on repairing these courts over the past 10 years. And now, due to structural issues in the subbase of the tennis courts, they have to be redone. The cost of replacing the tennis courts is $400,000. So taking advantage of the economies of scale now that we're under construction in the general area, now's the time to do that. In addition, the site plan for the project takes some of the space currently occupied by the tennis courts and uses it for traffic flow, emergency access, and parking. So the tennis courts, A, have to be replaced because they're past their lifespan for their lifespan, but we're also going to occupy some of that space to make the parking safer and the whole traffic flow safer. So the geothermal was not the only reason why the tennis courts were being redone. Finally, on the stop sign issue, any stop sign in the town of Weathersfield goes through a process dictated to every local unit of government by the Federal Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And in that manual and in the state law, there are certain conditions that warrant the location of a stop sign. This particular intersection that we've discussed tonight has been evaluated more than once in the time I've been here in the last 4 years, and the warrants are not met. In addition, the state law prohibits the use of a stop sign for speed control. All these issues have been reviewed by the police department and the town engineering department in accordance with the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and a stop sign is just not warranted in that location. It is not a question of cost in any sense of the word. It's a question of meeting the federal guidelines for the placement of traffic control devices. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Madam Town Clerk?
The only thing I have is that as of July 15th, some of the laws were changed and how much the town clerks collect for the state on certain land records recorded. And we were up and running for the 15th. It had been contested, and the ruling from the court came back on July 11th in the afternoon. So we're all set with that.
So
We now collect more money on certain documents that come into our office, and the town gets a larger share.
Okay.
Sorry. We also received notice today, we've been working with the residents over on Greenfield, that the request for a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit signage has been approved. So Physical Services will be placing those signs as soon as possible, and we'll start enforcement accordingly.
How's the activity at the basketball court?
I haven't heard anything on that, Chief. Have you heard anything? The activity at the basketball court on Greenfield?
Yeah, we have not received any complaints. And the officers have been paying a lot of attention to that, and we removed the cars from parking in that general area that, they call it a driveway, but it looks like almost like a little.
Right.
Once the cars were removed, that removed the car radios, and I think a lot of the individuals that were using them decided not to come back.
I think they might have migrated over to Cedar Street, but so far they're okay.
That's one of the problems that we have. One place to another.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to council action, ordinances, resolution, appointments for action, acceptance of resignations from boards and commissions. Deputy Mayor?
We have a resignation from a board in Park and Recreation Board, a resignation of Jeremy Donnelly, 19 Village Lane, as of today.
Okay, can I make that as a motion? And I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Dolores, you'll please send her a letter of thanks for her service. Thank you. Item 1B, appointments to boards and commissions, the Republican and Democratic appointments.
Okay.
And there's a long listing of appointments.
Paul, should I start off first? Is that
Sure,
okay?
go right ahead, John.
Okay. This is additions, they're all as of this date, so I'll just read the end dates. So they're all as of 7/23/13. Planning and Zoning Commission, Lee Standish as an alternate, 278 Hartford Avenue to 6/30/16. Assessment Appeals Board, George W. Cody as an alternative, 131 Charter Road, 6/30/16. Capital Improvements Advisory Committee, Ann Brickley, 143 Highcrest Road, 6/30/15. Nancy Stillwell, Children's Municipal Agency, Nancy Stillwell, it's a town employee, 505 Celestine Highway, 6/30/15. Disabilities, Weathersfield Advisory Committee for the People with Disabilities, Joan Haynes, 516 Highland Street, 6/30/15. Board of Ethics, Jody Latina as an alternate, 29 Blueberry Hill, 6/30/16. Flood and Erosion Control Board, Wesley E. Sargent, 39 Randy Lane, 6/30/16. Historic District Commission, Robert A. Gary is the chairman, 10 Morrison Avenue, 6/30/18. Paul E. Corshane is an alternative, 481 Main Street, 6/30/16. Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission, David Harold as a full-time position, 54 Old Mill Road, 6/30/16. Insurance Committee, Christopher Bazinet, 161 Garden Street, 6/30/18. Library Board of Directors, Ellen Laramie, 65 Knott Street, 6/30/16. Penny Stanziali, 15 Harold Street, 6/30/18. Park and Recreation Board, John Ratius, 418 Walcott Hill Road, 6/30/16. Personnel Appeals Board, Joseph Kaneski, 140 Eastern Drive, 6/30/16. Planning and Zoning Commission, Antonio L. Margiota, 155 Stocking Mill Road, 6/30/16. James Hughes, 135 Highland Street, 6/30/16. Senior Citizens Advisory Committee, Kathy Bagley is a town employee, 505 Celestine Highway, 6/30/15. Lisa Gallipo, town employee, 505 Celestine Highway, 6/30/15. Kathy Lieberman will be the chairman, 60 Lancaster Road. She's a town employee, Housing Authority, 6/30/15. Shade Tree Commission, Joseph Kanaski, 140 Eastern Drive, 6/30/16. Tourism Commission, Eleanor R. St. Ong, on the Historic Society, 39 Randy Lane Road, 6/30/16. Gina DeLay, 167 Church Street, 6/30/16. Youth Advisory Board, Barbara J. Rue, 79 Main Street, 6/30/16. Zoning Board of Appeals, John D. Gustafson as an alternative, 182 Amherst Street, 6/30/16.
And a second, please.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions, thank you. Counselor Montaneri?
Thank you, Mayor. The Capital Improvements Advisory Committee, Robert Turgeon, 962 Cloverdale Circle, till 6/30/15. The Disabilities Weathersfield Advisory Committee for People is Barbara Bajewski, Taft Bay Court, 6/30/15. Carol Keenan, 430 Wolcott Hill Road. Phil Neck, 100 Executive Square, and Sue Buckland from Wolcott Hill Road until 6/30/15. Board of Ethics, Paula Izzard, 89 Ciderbrook Drive till 6/30/16. Lorinda Kuhn, 11 Robbins Drive, and an alternate Lori Adeyemi, Woodstock Drive. Fair Rent Commission is Phil Neck at large, 100 Executive Square until 6/30/15. Flood and Erosion Control is Lorinda Kuhn and Douglas Ovian, 11 Robbins Drive and 56 Broad Street until 6/30/16. The Historic District Commission, Doug Ovian, 56 Broad Street until 6/30/16. And as an alternate, Cindy Greenblatt, 35 Broad Street until 6/30/14. The Inlands, Wetlands, and Watercourse Commission, Brent Owen, 42 Wells Farm Drive until 6/30/16, and Matt Zakaya, 12 Cornish Road until 6/30/16. Library Board of Directors is Alila Mandur, 420 Ridge Road until 6/30/16. Park and Rec Board, Tom Raganese, 140 Black Birch until 6/30/16. Planning and Zoning Commission, Joe Hamner, 65 Broad Street until 6/30/16. And the Redevelopment Agency, Mike Zaleski, 23 Black Birch Road until 6/30/18. The Senior Citizens Advisory Committee, Adele Antiou, 16 Bermuda Road until 6/30/15. Claire Meehan, 34 Tubrook Road, 6/30/15. And Joseph Meehan, same address, 6/30/15. Shade Tree Commission is Joe Hickey, 28 Meadowview Drive until 6/30/16. The Solomon Wells House Committee is Nancy Smith, 23 Bounce Road, 6/30/16. Youth Advisory Board is Kahid Kovasi, 80 Valley Crest Drive until 6/30/16. And finally, Zoning Board of Appeals, Morris Boria, 112 Bittersweet Hill until 6/30/18. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. There's no unfinished business under 3A, the townwide radio system authorization for the town manager to negotiate and execute a contract with Harris Corporation for the design, purchase, and installation of a complete 3-site radio communication system. Can I have a motion for discussion?
I'll motion for discussion.
And a second?
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Wait.
Not on the motion, for just for discussion.
Motion to discuss.
It's
Okay.
motion to discuss.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Let's discuss.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tonight, we have a presentation for you all from our consultant, Trot Communications, and from other town staff regarding the radio system proposal, the methodology that's been employed to make a recommendation, and answering a lot of the questions that have occurred not only tonight, but over the past few weeks. So at this time, I'd ask Keith Witt from Trot Communications, Assistant Town Manager Rayanne Palmer, and our other radio consultant, John Eichner, to approach the podium and review the material provided.
Good evening. On any given day, 47 police officers, 100 firefighters, 60 to 70 physical services staff, about a dozen Weathersfield Public Schools staff, another dozen or so Parks and Rec staff, and another dozen or so administrative and engineering staff have the radio system available to them to complete town business and provide service to our residents. Over the course of the last year and a half, we've been working on a solution to our end-of-life radio system. Just about a year and a half ago, Motorola Systems came to me and gave me a price list in our regular monthly meeting that was a list of items that they felt needed to be replaced on our existing radio system. That price list was in excess of $400,000. It could have been as high as $600,000 to $800,000. And it was a bit of a shock to the system for me to see that. I knew we were at end of life with the radio system. I didn't think we needed that much replaced. So in the course of that conversation, I said to the Motorola folks, well, if we're going to do all of this work and we're going to spend all this money, let's replace the controllers, which were the brains of the system. At that time, I was informed that we could not replace the controllers. It was outdated technology. They weren't manufactured anymore. And in fact, if we had one go out of service, we would need to try and find one. We couldn't find a new one anywhere. So after the meeting, I went into my office and I called Trot Communications, who have been working with us since 2005 to help mitigate some of the problems that have been ongoing with this system since it was installed. At that point, Keith and his then co-worker, George Weimer, who has since retired, talked to me about the fact that the list I sent them was only maintenance. It was not going to do anything to upgrade our system, and it in fact would leave us standing still with putting more money into a system that we would have to replace at some point in the future. That was the point at which we started to look at what the possibilities were. What were the solutions to solve this problem? Because as I said, much of our staff depends on that radio system every day to provide service. And I think all of us who are residents, myself included, have had the experience of a tornado coming through or a snowstorm or a hurricane when we've got down wires and trees. And that's when we see the value of the existing technology that we have, which is that the police, the fire, the physical services, the EOC, where often Mike Turner and the town manager and I sit and man the phones and the radios, we can all talk to each other on the same radio system. So we depend on this system. We use it every day to provide service to keep our residents safe. So that's the point at which we started a rather lengthy process to take a look at what were our possibilities, what steps we needed to make, with the goal of providing a system that would give us less problems and less risk than the existing system does, and to try and minimize the impact on the taxpayers of this community, because I, as a taxpayer as well, know that this is a hard pill to swallow to talk about a $3.5 million purchase. So with that said, I wanted to give you some background as to how we got where we are and where we started. I'd like to introduce Keith Witt from Trot Communications to talk about the technology so that you can understand and everybody here can understand what the technology is, and to talk a little bit about our rather extensive process that we went through to bring this proposal before you tonight. And I also want to acknowledge that the Chief of Police and his command staff and the Fire Chief and his command staff are with us tonight to answer any questions you may have and to potentially offer some comments. So, Keith?
All right, good evening. I am Keith Witt from Trot Communications Group. We are indeed from Texas, but I'm sure it won't take much time for me to speak, and you'll figure that out. But anyway, Trot is an independent consulting firm. We were founded in 1978. We have no vested interest in the sale of any equipment. Our only goal is to provide our clients with the information that they need to make an informed decision. And I have worked for Trot since 1991. It'll be 22 years in November that I've worked with this type of system. Before I get too much into the process, I thought it might be good just to take a few steps backwards, talk a little bit about some of the terminology and some of the technology to give us a common point of reference. There's several terms that I think you've probably heard in recent weeks and in recent months. The first one, trunked radio. What does that really mean? So when it comes to public safety dispatch systems, there's really two forms. There's conventional and there's trunked. Conventional is your basic type of channel where you have a frequency that's dedicated to a specific use. You might have a fire channel, or you might have a police channel or a public service channel. So in a conventional system such as that would be a 3-channel conventional. That works fine as long as you have a small amount of users and a small amount of user groups. But once you start to try to put an entire town staff onto a system, then you start to get into problems in terms of overloading those channels. So then you need more channels to support the user groups. So if you wanted to have, let's just say, a police dispatch channel along with police tactical and fire ground along with fire dispatch and various forms of public service and public works, all of a sudden you get into the need for having 6, 7, 8, 10 channels real quick. The problem is channels are in very short supply from the FCC. They expect you to use the channels you have very efficiently. That's where trunking comes in. What trunking does is it has a pool of channels that are assigned by an intelligent controller, and that pool of channels is actually assigned on demand. So when a user does a PTT in the field, the system then assigns the channel to be used. It allows you to get much better efficiency out of the system and to support much more user groups than the number of channels available. So in the case of the town's current system, you have a 5-channel trunked radio system, yet you support over 40 talk groups. You routinely use 22 of those talk groups on a daily basis. It would take 22 conventional channels to duplicate that, and that's simply not practical. Trunking also does some other things in terms of the control of the system, administration of the system. I won't really get into that in terms of details. The next thing I wanted to discuss is simulcast. Simulcast is a means of delivering coverage. If you have a service area that cannot be covered by one site, you need multiple sites to cover it, then you have to decide how you want to cover it. So if you say need 2 sites, for example, then the easy and inexpensive way to do that is to have a group of channels on site A, a group of channels on site B. But as we just discussed, the town has a 5-channel system, and if they wanted to duplicate that over 2 sites, now they need 10. If they wanted to duplicate that over 3 sites, now they need 15. So once again, you get into a situation where you cannot efficiently acquire the channels to do that. Simulcast allows you to use the same channel set on all sites to give you a composite footprint. That's very important because it allows you to use way less channels, and the FCC simply will not give you the number of channels to operate separate frequencies at each site. To make simulcast work, there is very specific equipment that's needed because you have to tightly synchronize the sites or you will get into interference conditions. P25 is another term that you've probably heard a bit. P25 is an over-the-air protocol. It's basically the language that the radio speaks to the system. The system you have today is not P25 compliant. P25 wasn't really an option at the time that you purchased your last system. The problem is that all of the trunk systems that were previous generation used proprietary technology. So the various systems, you could not take a radio from system A, talk on system B, so on and so forth. So there were many proprietary systems in the public safety arena around, which caused a lot of problems to public safety operators in being able to interoperate when they needed to work a mutual event. Because of that, public safety interest groups got together and said, we need to develop a standard for public safety. That was where P25 came from. It was really to address the interoperability challenges that have existed for many years. Last time I was at a meeting here at the town, somebody asked a very good question. They said, why are radio systems so expensive, and what are the basic components that go into one? Thought it might be helpful to go over that very briefly as well. You basically build a radio system with several subsystems. First of all, you have the tower sites. The tower sites is what provides the coverage to the users. That's your antennas, that's your transmitters, receivers, so on and so forth. You then have the controller backbone. This is the intelligent trunking part I was talking about. This is what does all the channel assignments. It's the brains of the system. It also performs all the administrative functions on the system as well, and also handles all the simulcast timing and synchronization. Then you have the dispatch components, and these are the special dispatch consoles that are used at your dispatch center. It also includes the voice recording equipment. Then you have the backhaul system. The backhaul system are the data paths that are used, the data circuits that are used to tie all of your sites and dispatch center together and make them function as an entire system. And then finally, you get to the user equipment, and those are the handhelds and the mobiles that the users use out in the field. The other topic that has come up many times is end of life. When we're talking about that in the context of this particular system and really any of the analog trunked systems, we're talking about the controller backbone. Part of the development of P25 and going towards a standards-based platform, kind of parallel to that, the industry itself was changing, the underlying technology that was used. So what you ended up having is that the new P25 systems were built on a new platform. It went to IP-based technology. It's now servers and routers and switches, things that are much more like a computer system. And all the equipment runs effectively on software now. So that is really where the end-of-life issue comes from, is in the previous generation of systems, you had racks of equipment that were highly proprietary. You had cards of equipment that ran embedded software on it, and it's just not practical for the manufacturers to continue to support that indefinitely. So it doesn't matter what trunked radio system would have been bought 10 years ago, you would be looking at an end-of-life situation. It's because the technology has simply changed and it's impossible to continue to support it long-term. So that takes us into kind of what we were dealing with here. It was the end of life that prompted the discussion. And when it became apparent that the only solution available to the town was to replace the system, I was immediately asked, what's that going to cost? Based on other similar procurements that I had been involved with in recent years, I said, well, that's going to cost somewhere between $4.5 and $5.5 million. That's just what they cost. Of course, the town wasn't really excited about that. That had a severe budgetary impact. So I was immediately asked, well, what alternatives are there? What can we do? How can we approach this? And I had mentioned that I had been involved in a couple of situations that really went off of a different procurement method, and that was a performance-based method. You would identify in that method suppliers who were capable of providing the equipment and the service and the technology that you need. After vetting those, then you could solicit proposals from them. If that's done correctly, there's a few advantages that are potentially at your disposal. Number one is, it gives you the opportunity to sit down and really build a customized approach. It's kind of it's an approach that allows you to really sit down with the vendors, come up with everything you need in a very open forum. It's a design-build sort of process. It allows you to pre-qualify the companies that are capable of supplying what you need. What's important about that is it avoids wasting the resources and the money and the time from the manufacturers that simply cannot provide what it is that you are asking for, and it also stops the town from wasting their time there as well. But most importantly, if you go through a process like that, that is really the non-traditional approach, all of the manufacturers and the vendors and the providers understand that there must be some cost incentive for you to go down that path. Because of that, they tend to dig deep in order to make that happen. And I've been involved in several of these where I saw some very attractive pricing offered. Based upon that discussion, the town said, well, let's at least take a look at this. It didn't have to be a commitment to do it. It was simply, let's take a look at it. So we started down the process of trying to pre-qualify who we'd want to talk to. It was very important that we develop a list of standards. That standards, just to go over them really briefly, to overcome existing coverage deficiencies in the current system. I know it was said that maybe there's nothing wrong with the current system, but I personally drove every street in this town and was involved in extensive coverage tests, and I can tell you there are plenty of coverage holes. Then the next was to overcome the issues with the backhaul system. The backhaul network that you use today is microwave. That microwave system has been a problematic area for you since the very beginning. We have to overcome that. We have to do better, and we really need a redundant system so that if you do have a failure, there's an alternate path available in order to maintain communications. Next was, we obviously need this to be P25 compliant. That is the standard that solves a lot of the interoperability issues of the past. It needs to do that, but not only does it need to do that, it needs to also take care of the future, and that means that it needs to be capable of P25 Phase 2. It needs to have an architecture that has high availability, meaning that it has to have a lot of redundancy built in with a lot of failover features. It needs to be an IP-based platform with projected lifespan of 15 to 20 years. There needs to be a long-term maintenance plan to keep the system healthy throughout its life, and that plan has to be affordable to the town. And finally, any supplier of equipment, any engineering firm that works on it, anybody that's involved in the integration, the installation, or the maintenance needs to have a history of performance with the technology that's being proposed to show that they are capable of performing long-term. So, based upon that, we went through this process. It was identified on just the equipment alone, there were 3 firms producing equipment that seemed to meet this goal: Motorola, Cassidian, and Harris. However, on the totality of the list of pre-qualifications, it was actually determined that Cassidian and Harris were the 2 firms that the town was interested in talking to and developing a proposal with. So the next part of the process was to speak with each of those 2 firms. Each were invited in separately. We went through a series of meetings to go over all of the requirements in terms of coverage, reliability, guarantees, everything that was necessary to take care of all of the needs of the town. We went through all of those in great detail. We talked about the technologies available, the failover capabilities, things that they may be working on in the future, the way they adhere to standards, developments that they saw to deal with future standards. We talked about the life expectancy of those systems. We went out and toured all the facilities, the tower sites, the dispatch centers, everything available to us to give the vendors an opportunity to take their notes, to take their pictures, to do everything they needed to do to prepare a fully comprehensive proposal back for the town. We then collected those proposals back. We looked at the Cassidian proposal, we looked at the Harris proposal. At the end of that evaluation process, it was determined that Harris provided everything that the town had asked for. There is a coverage guarantee. That coverage guarantee shall be tested. Every grid, every street, every place in this town will be tested to determine that that coverage guarantee is met. And if the guarantee is not met, they don't get paid. There will be a performance bond attached to that to back that up. They have all of the long-term maintenance plans in place. They have a dual backhaul system. What is being proposed here is a microwave system as well as a fiber optic system with a failover mechanism, so if one fails, then the other one takes over. At the end of this process, also, it was found that the Harris system offered the most attractive price of anything that we had looked at. I'll actually make a further statement on that. I have been involved in a number of procurements over the past several years, and this was the lowest price on a comparable system that I've seen. Based on all of that, the town decided that it was appropriate to take this to the next step and start to see what it would take to put together a package.
The next piece of this is what we want to talk about is probably the most critical element. We've vetted a lot of the references used in the backgrounds, and John's got some information on some of those and what separates this system out from some of the other ones in the area.
Thank you. John Eichner. I've spent a good part of the last 2 months doing just that, calling towns, municipalities throughout the country, in fact, throughout North America, to check on references provided by not only Marcus, but Motorola, and even Harris, to verify some of the claims. I could spend the rest of we could be here till midnight tonight, and I still wouldn't be done filling you in on what I've discovered. But I'm just going to save you all a lot of time and give you a couple of highlights. One of the things that we have discovered, well, first let me talk a little bit about Marcus Communications. I'm not here to badmouth Marcus Communications at all. That's not my job. But I did, as the town manager said, I did vet some of the references they provided. And there was some erroneous information put before you tonight. And I'll get to that in a minute. But one of the things we did find in doing the checks is that almost to a town, Marcus's clients love him. They can't complain about him. Marcus, they're very happy. And we're happy for him that his business is doing well and he's serving his customers well. However, he serves a niche of customers, and we found that those are primarily public safety only systems. Those are almost entirely, with a few exceptions, conventional systems and not trunked systems. We've also discovered that Marcus has developed a niche in installing AvTech consoles. That's great. Keith says they're a great console. We don't want AvTech consoles. We want consoles that are built by the manufacturer. So for his niche, he meets the needs of his clients, and that's great. One of the things he stated earlier is that he has not had any failures in the state. I spoke this morning to a town, actually the two towns in particular are Windsor and Bloomfield. They both have attempted LTR passport trunking systems installed by Mr. Marcus. Both of those were failures. They did not work. LTR is a type of trunking. Keith talked earlier about trunking systems. LTR uses non-intelligent trunking. It doesn't use a control channel. It's a very simplistic one. Passport's a higher level of LTR that just didn't work in these two towns. One of the other points that Mr. Marcus made earlier was that he repriced his schedule and came up with a different price. The Harris proposal includes a significant number of dual band radios. Those are both 800 megahertz trunked, and those are UHF, primarily for the fire department to use for their mutual aid operations. And there are a significant number of those. Tate does not manufacture a dual band radio. So if they've repriced it, they still have not provided one of the key components of the package, the proposal we have from Harris. Finally, there was a significant number of Tate references. Tate is the manufacturer that Marcus is pitching. We've checked all the Tate installations throughout the country, all the P25s. They are almost all conventional. There's a few multicast or simulcast in there. We found from their references and even from the Tate website, one P25 trunk system in North America. It is installed for Atco Electric in Edmonton, Alberta. It is I spoke to the engineer who was in charge of that installation for the electric company this morning. He told me that that system is not installed. It has not been accepted. They've been at it over a year. It does not work. And his final advice to me was, call me back in a month and I'll let you know if they're still here. So there's not even one Tate P25 trunked radio system operational in North America. I doubt that there's any anywhere else in the world either, but I didn't check that far. Basically, that's the sum and substance of the analysis.
Well, let's talk about the other references. I mean, everybody's got systems, everybody's got pluses and minuses, right? The open sky issue.
Right, open sky. We were provided, I believe it was yesterday, with a list of open sky systems provided by Harris. In the context of, for Mr. Marcus, here's where Harris has failed. Well, the list was 28 sites. 5 of them were failures. 5 of them were not completed installations. 24 of them, or 23 of them, a significant number of them are up and operational. In fact, we tried reaching those 5 sites. We got 3 of those 5 sites today. Two of the municipalities involved did not return calls. We left messages. Of the 3 we did talk to, 2 of them, in fact, tried to negotiate with Harris to replace the open sky. First of all, let me make the point clear. Open sky is not the type of system that Harris has proposed for the town. It is not anywhere near. It's an older technology, and in fact, while we don't know their corporate strategy, we believe that Harris is kind of backing away from the open sky technology. But getting back to the point, 2 of the 3 sites we did talk to tried to negotiate a Harris P25 system in lieu of the Open Sky proposal. Once they had gone down the road of Open Sky and realized how difficult and mistakes that were made on both sides, they said, oh, both of the, one was, can't remember now, do you remember? One was New York State, and the other was a town in Indiana, that's correct. Both of those towns, or both those entities tried to negotiate an out, and that out was install your P25 system. So there was an indication, there's a recognition that it wasn't the company that was the difficulty, it was the technology that the company had proposed and that the New York State and the town had bought into. And they recognized the value of working out a solution with the exact system that's been proposed here, the P25 trunk system.
I just want to add that I just gave John erroneous information. It was Nevada, a town in Nevada, not Indiana. I also want to note that the Open Sky technology is technology that was designed for data transport and mobile transport. I believe Northeast Utilities in Connecticut uses it. It's a technology that's used primarily by utility companies, and for example, FedEx uses it as well to move packages, to send data back and forth. Not really a technology that was designed for public safety radios. And I did actually, at the last minute before I left today, talk to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, who went out of their way to not say anything bad about Harris, but instead to tell us that they had an issue with the portable coverage, which is what the technology is not designed for. So I just wanted to make sure that we're clear.
And another point on that too was 2 of the 3 communities that I talked to echoed that sentiment. They said the reasons for the failure were primarily voice quality, which would follow. If the system was designed for data transmissions and not for voice primarily, it makes sense. So I think that's about it in terms of the references. Are there any others you want me to point out or bring up?
Before we open it up to questions of the group or any of the staff, the basis of this process was to identify those vendors who have deployed the technology recommended by Trot Communications, and those were the vendors we looked at. That's not to say that there aren't other radio vendors out there. Mr. Marcus provides an excellent product, without question, but there's not a successful deployment of the same simulcast P25 system from Tate Communications.
Correct.
So when we looked at what's available in the marketplace, those 3 vendors referenced by Trot were the options, and from those options, we vetted those systems, and that's where we are today. So we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Do counselors have questions?
I had a question.
Counselor Hurley?
Why would Harris, to your point, why would Harris try to put something in that they knew wasn't good technology?
Come up to Yes,
You
John,
need to come up
the
to the microphone, please.
Rayanne says she thinks she can give it a shot.
I think when the Harris systems were sold, P25 wasn't fully developed yet, and Open Sky was an opportunity. This was around 2004. Open Sky was an opportunity to increase the capacity of a system and to allow for interoperability. It was really Harris's first foray into interoperability, and there are public safety systems that use Open Sky and are very happy with it. I think that there were some communities that when P25 was fully developed kind of changed their mind about it, and in fact the New York State system, when they canceled that contract, that was a system that stayed with Tyco, the previous owner of Harris. Tyco actually sued New York State and won a judgment against New York State for canceling that contract. So I wouldn't say it was bad technology as much as it was technology that had a different purpose.
Counselor Drake?
Could you just briefly let everybody know where Harris came from? I mean, they were
Yes.
I mean, this is, just so people know, this is not as, this is a big boy in this business, so.
Yes,
yeah.
Harris Corporation, and I certainly could use perhaps some refreshers. My first experience with Harris Corporation was 20-plus years ago when they were owned by GE. They have a manufacturing company in Lynchburg, Virginia. Most of their equipment is manufactured in the United States, and they've been in business for almost as long as Motorola in terms of providing public safety radio systems. Over the course of the years, Ericsson bought into GE because they wanted to get into the market here in America, so it became GE Ericsson. And then that was spun off and sold to Maycom and Tyco, and Harris now owns what was originally the GE, I still call them GE radios, frankly, and Harris is one of the biggest manufacturers of public safety radio equipment in the world. They are, in fact, in every military installation in our military, and all of the radios in our Humvees and all of our equipment that's serving in foreign countries is actually manufactured by Harris Communications. They're a huge player in this market.
Jim, and then Paul.
Yeah, so I appreciate the overview of the history of the past 18 months. I think that's probably new information for the depth of analysis that's gone into this for the public, but for council members, you've been keeping us updated. And I know that it hasn't been made public because of security concerns, coverage concerns. We didn't want to publicize the issues that we had at hand, as well as litigation matters at hand. So I appreciate the oversight given to this project and the thoughtfulness. The question I have is, could you briefly explain to the public, not the process we necessarily use, but why we're allowed to use that process and go to negotiate a contract with Harris, and what would be the pros and cons of doing the RFP process versus going to referendum?
Absolutely. There's a couple of factors that are involved, and I have had lengthy conversations with the town attorney about this. First and foremost, there are state contracts in place from the state of Connecticut process for purchase of radio equipment for Harris, for Motorola, for Tate, for E.F. Johnson, and for Kenwood. So the state goes ahead and does their typical bid process to allow municipalities, they go out and do the bidding, and then they allow municipalities to buy from it. In this instance, we're also talking about a professional service. We're talking about a fully engineered, designed system, such that it's not just we're going to go buy something off the shelf. It's actually an engineering design, and our charter does have a provision in it that allows us to not using a sealed bid process if we're procuring a professional service or a design service. And so that was the basis that we chose to do this. In terms of an RFP process, as Keith said, and he's fully involved in this, he does this all over the country, and as a matter of fact, he's working with Greenwich, Connecticut now, who are in the same boat we are. We have a better price than we would have gotten from an RFP process. They're very costly for vendors to get involved in. But in truth, one of our other bigger concerns was, and it's come out, so I'm going to say it, is that we are in litigation with Motorola. We have had multiple problems that we have not made public with our radio system. It's been down how many times in the past week? 6 times in the past week.
One day, about a dozen.
So we are having consistent problems with the performance and reliability of our radio system, and it's a Motorola system. It needs to be serviced by Motorola. So we were trying to maintain the existing radio system and also try and find a solution to this. And we felt that we wanted to talk to those vendors that could provide a proven solution, a solution that would allow us to replace the system with something reliable, something that we knew would work, would give us the technology that we use on a daily basis to be able to communicate with each other. And it's really a simple thing that we talk to each other. But in truth, we don't have the staff to not be able to do that. So if we were to go to RFP process right now, for example, after a year and a half of doing this, we would add about 6 months to do just the RFP process and get to contract, and then it would take about 18 months to build out a system. So we're looking at a 2-year gap. If we were to get approval in the near future, we've got the contract almost fully negotiated. We would be able to build and be up and running on a new system in a year. I can't tell you how long the existing system is going to stay put. I will tell you that Motorola has been working with us and has been very good about trying to work with us to keep the system running. But some of it's just not supported anymore, and some of it is going to cost us more and more money to replace. And right now we're running the system without any backup. We used to have an A and B side on the controllers. We now only have an A side. So I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Yes, and I just assume if we went to referendum, it would even elongate the time further.
Yes, and I think we've had this conversation, and maybe Jeff could respond to the referendum question.
What would be the question? Well, the referendum isn't necessary, given the town attorney wrote an opinion that said, based upon the charter provisions in regard to budgeted items and advisory referendum, this purchase does not fit the criteria that would allow a referendum.
Okay.
Counselor Montanari?
Thank you, Donna. A couple of comments. First, Ray Ann and Keith, before I ask a couple of questions. One is, it's clear from your presentation, and also I think a lot of work that was done previous to this meeting and discussions that have happened both in infrastructure and I think several follow-up meetings, including one that I had with Keith and Ray Ann and Jeff a couple of weeks ago, that a lot of work has been done very capably, obviously, by you, Ray Ann, and certainly Jeff and the consultants. So I want to make that point because there's some areas of inquiry and sort of concern that I have even to this day that I've shared with you that do not reflect that work. It reflects some questions that I have about how the process has unfolded and some areas of concern that I have about what we don't have at this point with respect to comparison that leave me a little hesitant to support moving forward with Harris. So I want to make sure I said that first, and I know I shared that with you, Ray Ann, yesterday.
Thank you.
A lot of folks in town that are looking at a $3.6 million expenditure, I'm sure are going to raise an eyebrow and want to be sure that the council has done its due diligence. And in that process, obviously, we're looking at the work that you've done, the work that Keith has done from Trot, obviously John, and all of that. In light of, I should also say, I'm sure all of us, there's nobody at this dais that wants to risk public safety and the coverages, and we've had many issues, obviously, with coverage. But one of the things I think I said to Keith, and you may want to respond to this, Keith, in my inquiry of you, is Motorola, without going into what would be considered breaching any litigation discussion, they are our current vendor, and they would probably be motivated to address the pending litigation as well as the recognition that the system that we have today is not long-term. That you identify them as one of the three that is clearly capably able to be considered for this system, and yet today we do not have a quote from them other than an estimate. I'm concerned about that because I think when I look at a litigation, and I've had experience in business where you have a litigation with your current vendor, and oftentimes when you come to the table, a neutral party looks at that and they're able to discuss how we might be able to resolve the litigation and also get to where we need to be. That could include, for example, speculating here, but Motorola could, for example, buy back a portion of this equipment, give us a more aggressive price to be retained as their vendor, and also at the same time resolve the litigation. Well, we do not have that option as we sit here today. So that concerns me because I would like to have that option. We can always decline as a town. We can always say, okay, Motorola has come back with a specific proposal that compares their system capacity with Harris, gives us a number, and says in turn would provide us the following additional amenities to resolve the litigation. We can always decline that as a town and say, thank you very much, good price, good resolution, but we're not comfortable based on the 11-year performance, and then we can go forward. I would be more comfortable in that scenario if that was true. That's one issue for me. The second is, if I look at the Casidian actually did not provide us a bid side by side. They provided us an estimate based on their, if I understand it correctly, Keith, they actually didn't physically come in and meet and go through that whole process quite the same way as Harris. Is that roughly accurate?
Well, actually, they did participate in the same way, but they actually chose to do a two-step process. They did not want to go to the expense of preparing a formal proposal unless it was felt that the town believed that the pricing provided was something that they would like to pursue. So they said, here is what we'll give you, this is what it will cost. If you believe that it's worth moving forward, we will then take that next step and we will turn that into a formal proposal. There was no indication that that price would change. They were actually given several opportunities to give us their best price, and we believe that they did that.
Okay, can you go back to my first point about Motorola, though, and just respond, because I know you chatted about this with me a little bit, just to refresh my memory. Would you agree it would make some sense, or potentially could make some sense, to have that side by side if we had that discussion?
Well, the reason that it didn't happen is because we had read down a list of requirements to say if someone's going to participate in this, they need to meet all of these. And the feeling was that the history of performance here in a performance-based solicitation, if the history of performance was such that the town did not see fit to go that route. Quite frankly, the town is your best reference and their worst reference in this particular situation.
Yeah.
So it was believed by the town staff and the group at the time that it was simply not appropriate to go that route.
And I understand that, but put that aside for a moment. Would it not be more beneficial to at least have that comparison? Notwithstanding that town could still come back and say, historically, we had enough issues that we're not going to pursue it. But if you could just address whether it would make some sense to have that comparison and potentially explore on behalf of Motorola whether or not some accommodations could be made in light of the litigation that could also solve that, because we are still in litigation. If we were to choose Harris tonight, for example, that litigation doesn't go away. In fact, we have no options but to consider litigation as our only pursuit. And in fact, we would be in a situation where some of our leverage with them would disappear. Is that not a fair assessment?
Possibly. I'm not in the legal business. It would be difficult for me to answer that.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm not trying to pin you down on that. I'm just suggesting that's an area of concern for me individually that I would feel better about. And I would also say that anytime you have a dispute, there's two sides. Motorola has shared some documentation with us over the last 10 days that suggests they would like an audience to share their side. And we've all been involved here on the council with some of it. But the last issue I have with respect to something that I think we've shared or heard a little bit from Marcus tonight, I don't feel as comfortable saying that Marcus is not capable. I think he raises an issue as a vendor that at least, again, suggests to me an alternative that I would want to see. And I'm not a proponent of an RFP process. I'm not a proponent of the referendum. I don't want to delay this process in light of the deficiencies we exist today. I think there's an urgency that Ray has made very clear to our governing body. But I also think it would be safe to bet that based on what Marcus said tonight, that could be assembled fairly quickly as a comparison that would give us, again, additional reference point that would make me more comfortable before I vote on $3.5 million of our taxpayer money. So that's where I'm stuck. You know, we've got basically one vendor who has submitted a $3.5 million proposal that's concrete, solid, and comparable. And we don't have really, in my mind, something that is as concrete to compare it to that makes me feel like when I hear a vendor saying, well, wait a minute, there's some arguments I would make in favor of A, B, and C. And one of the things I've heard is, well, we're not as comfortable with Marcus because they don't have this exact system in play. But yet, if I understood it correctly from some of the material, he's got dozens of towns that are using his services capably, that I would like to hear from that vendor who might be able to say, well, yes, Trot is correct that we do not have this, but we have this, and in comparison, it might be some value for us to hear that before we say we're going to go with one vendor without that comparison. So, I mean, again, there's a prudence involved. All of us went down this path before in terms of some discussion. None of us here, I think, was on the council 11 or 12 years ago when this process unfolded, and we made a choice that I think obviously did not meet our needs. So I'm reticent about, with one vendor, one situation, saying we're going to go forward. I don't want to suggest that we drag this on for 15 months. That would be a very imprudent choice. But I don't know that the RFP is our only alternative. I think hearing from a local vendor who has service in many towns in our state, I myself would be very comfortable wanting to hear from that first, just speaking for myself. So those are just some questions I have. I'm not stuck on this thing. I've had lengthy conversation with Ray Ann about it. She's been extremely helpful. You have been very helpful, Keith. But there are still enough questions in the air, and I think there's probably enough questions in the air for the public, frankly, that have we sufficiently exhausted these alternatives? And we've got 2 vendors who have solicited on their own to come forward and pursue us, one of whom is saying he's got $1 million of savings on the table, which may be nice sales stick, with no disrespect to Bruce, but I'd like to hear from him before I say, oh no, that can't possibly be the case. And Harris is absolutely the cheapest deal in town, so we've got to go with that. So that's where I'm at. You know, you've addressed some of it. I appreciate that. Some terrific work has been done. I think we're very close, but I think we have some distance to go before I would say yes to it.
Other counselors?
Thank you, Don.
Counselor Cocken and then Counselor Drake.
Thank you. A few questions. Rand, first question is, I was looking in our packet, and I think the updated one that we just got today, there are proposals from both March and July.
Yes.
The one in July is $100,000 higher than the one in March.
That's for a complete replacement of the fire paging system. At the time that we solicited the proposals, we focused on the trunked radio system and did not look at the fire paging. We learned subsequent to that some of our paging equipment may, which is also a Motorola UHF system, conventional system, simulcast, however, that it might be at end of life. We verified that one of the main components of it is end of life. We also took a look at whether we could keep it running and whether we could support it, and you'll see a very nice issue paper from Keith as we went through this process. But at any rate, we asked Harris to come back, take a look at the fire paging system, and to give us a quote on replacing it. And to also give us the quote 2 ways, to give us the quote as part of the system that they're proposing to us, or to give us the quote as independent, that we might do it a year or 2 down the road. The price to do it, right, you know, if we do the radio system, is $100,000. The price to do it in a couple of years is $238,000 by today's prices. So in talking with the fire department, their concern was that they would go with whatever decision we made as long as we could support their system. We took a look at the support component of it, and we would have to rely on our existing support vendor, which is a Motorola shop, to support it, while we would be using Harris to support the main radio system, and actually a third vendor that supports our fiber network. So we felt that the opportunity for issues with something as critical as calling our firefighters out was too great to risk having support in 3 places, and are making a recommendation that we put the $100,000 on top of the original 3.5 quote and go ahead and move forward with it. I also want to add that we've actually had 3 quotes from Harris. We received their original proposal in February. We went back afterwards and looked at it and adjusted some things. We changed the user equipment numbers. We changed the microwave hops. We moved where the control points would be, and the price came back at about $3.7 million. And we went back and renegotiated that, and they brought it back down to 3.5. So it's kind of gone from 3.5 to 3.7 back to 3.5, and now to 3.6 again to include the fire paging. And we were reluctant to do the fire paging because it's still analog, it's old technology, but there is not digital paging out there. And to meet our NFPA standards and for our ISO rating, we need to do paging independent of a commercial carrier. So that's where we are with that.
So all the other pieces of it are the same between the March and the July?
Yes.
So I also noticed that the warranty, the price of the warranty was $15,000 higher per year.
That's the paging.
That's the paging. So we're paying an extra $15,000 for, I don't know, warranty, replacement, or whatever.
Right.
Okay. All right. Maybe if you could, I think I got a little lost on, is there a relationship between Cassidian and Tate, or are they just?
Keith can answer that.
That is a bit confusing. Tate provided the transmitter equipment that Cassidian uses. Tate was not in the trunking business. Tate only built conventional systems. Cassidian then built the backbone or the intelligence, the trunking portion of that with a partnership with Tate. So Cassidian is the supplier, and they are using Tate as the transmission piece of that. Tate has since recently announced that they are doing their own trunking system. And so that is the piece that we said has yet to be deployed. So Tate, as a complete independent provider, has not done trunking to date. As a partner to Cassidian, they had, and that was who we sought another bid from.
Okay, and have there been quality issues in terms of the Cassidian transmitter equipment with Tate, or is Tate?
No. There have been no issues that I'm aware of in terms of Tate's ability to build a transmitter.
Okay. Thanks. Another question goes back to actually to a comment from the public. So if most of the towns, it sounds like all towns are going to be facing phase out of their radio systems, just because many are using things that are getting obsolete that can't be replaced. What is the likelihood at this point with surrounding towns that at some point, whether it be at Rocky Hill or Newington or Glastonbury or Hartford or whatever, that at some point these towns are likely to go in the same direction as what you're proposing we do in the near future?
Well, there are a couple of points there. One is that the end-of-life issues predominantly affecting those that are doing analog trunking. Many of those you mentioned are not. However, anybody that would elect to go this route, one of the benefits of the modern IP-based trunking platform, regardless of who you buy it from, is the ability to expand those systems. So it would be very feasible for others to join a system later on. If you were to build a system of any type, then it would be very feasible for others to backhaul their sites to your switch and get some benefit there and have a joint system. And that's really just what the IP technology allows you to do.
So is it that they don't necessarily use trunking systems? Is that the issue? And
That's the issue. A majority of the people named there do not actually do trunking systems. Therefore, they are not facing the same end-of-life issues that the town is facing.
So their systems are actually predate the one we're using right now?
Well, in some cases, they are P25 conventional, which would be newer, but they're conventional and not trunked. So they are going the route we had talked about, where they have a dedicated channel for each department.
Okay, so but as far as we know, there's no movement afoot in any of these towns that in the near future they're going to be replacing their systems as well.
The town manager and I actually had a conversation with our mid-state towns about a month ago, Jeff, a couple of months ago, and none of them are ready to move at this point, but all of them said we'll talk to you when the time comes. The other thing that I want to really make sure that everybody understands is that when you talk about a non-trunk system, you're talking about a system that is one channel per user. So if I want to talk, if I'm a police officer and I want to talk on it, I have to wait to the person that's done. If the public works folks have their own channel and they want to talk to me, they've got to call the dispatcher and then have the dispatcher call it back. The value of the trunk system, and this is a totally non-technical explanation, I'm sure Keith could do a better job, but from a practical perspective, the value of the trunk system is it allows us to all be on the same system, to all talk to each other, and the capacity is such that we could have the fire department talking on their what's called a talk group or on their fire ground. The police detectives could be talking while the police patrol officers are, but yet we could all talk to each other, and they can talk to Jeff and I, they can talk to engineering, they can talk to physical services. And again, that's what's demonstrated when we have a storm and we have our crews out there clearing streets and calling the police and getting the fire department out to help with fires and down limbs and whatnot. So that's the difference. That's the critical element of our radio system in terms of going with a trunked radio system.
Yeah, just going back to the original question on the warranties, I noticed that the warranty goes up is like, I don't know, 3% a year in cost, or they're 2.5%, 3% a year based on the bid in here. What would happen after the first 5 years?
Oh, we could continue the warranty. I think that we would have to evaluate at that point how to do that. There are several options. We're also looking, frankly, at a maintenance bond that's like a performance bond, but that it would actually be a maintenance bond on the maintenance contract to guarantee the maintenance of the system as well. But we could play that out for 10 years. We just did it for 5 years. And, you know, the first year is fully covered. The second year, the warranty kicks in on the infrastructure, but the user equipment is still covered. Year 3, the user equipment adds on, and the recommendation from Harris is to only cover the user equipment for 3 years, because at that point you're going to know whether it works or not, and you just build some money in case you have to, you know, someone damages a unit. The increase is directly related to the fire paging system. We do fire paging in a much more complex way than the average community does. We use it for two-way communications. So to be able to implement that in this environment, it requires some second-party or third-party equipment. That's what drove the price of the maintenance up, was to cover not only the Harris equipment, but the third-party equipment. We also have an opportunity. There are 2 Harris techs that live in state. The Harris office is in Meriden, Connecticut, and has been for 20 plus, maybe more years. So there are other ways to do warranty that we would look at, or maintenance that we would look at after about 5 years.
And there's not, after the first 5 years, I see a quote, but there's no like necessarily price protection after the first 5 years.
I'd say there's no price protection after the first couple. I mean, the quote is there and they're giving it to us, but you know, I can certainly clarify that. We didn't ask them to give it to us past 5 years.
Okay, all right. And just one other question, which actually, and I apologize, it sort of has to do with the next motion, but because we're talking about the total cost of this system, I couldn't tell from the background on the lease, because we're talking, the next motion is to lease this system. I couldn't tell the duration of the lease. And
It's 10 years.
It's 10 years? So it'd be fully paid after?
Fully
off?
paid after 10 years, correct.
And the expectation is that it would last, what are we talking about, 15
to 20 years.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Counselor Drake?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've been on this town council 3.5 years. I was on an earlier one, and we've been dealing with this for a long, long time. So most of you know that this has not been something that's been taken lightly for a long time. It's time to really fix this thing. The advantage of the problems we've had in the last 10 years that other towns may not have is that our consultant, Ray Ann, they probably know more about this thing than anybody. If we had a beautiful system, we wouldn't know what we'd be looking at. But I think with the staff and the fire department, everybody, we know what we have, what we don't want, and we really know how to fix what we want. So it's not like we're going into this thing uneducated at this point. The idea, Paul, regarding going to Motorola, I've owned a business for 15 years. I've been doing business with big companies. I don't see how any way at this point we could work with Motorola based on what we have and what we're doing. I just don't see it. And I think they're probably the only other company here that can really do what we want to do, but I just don't think you can go there. Now, 20 years from now, when this Harris is all done and everybody's dead and retired, we probably go back to Motorola, but I just don't see how you can get there right now. I think you just can't go there. And Tate, the proposal, you know, we're looking at Tate as an alternative. They didn't even get to the next first level. Based on what we just went through, and I don't think the people in town realize how we've struggled with this for 10 years. We can't go with somebody who's even had 2, 3, 4, 5 systems. We need somebody that, we can't screw this up again. This is way too much money. And we spent a lot of time. So even if we went out for an RFP to get those 2 people to come in, I think we'd be, I hate to say it, I think we'd be somewhat wasting their time. I wouldn't be comfortable on any condition to go with either one of those, to tell you the truth. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Councilor
Just
McAllister?
a question to follow on David's point. I think we've done a lot of homework and we understand what we want from a system in terms of the specifications. So that work is pretty much done. And we've established those minimum requirements of a vendor. Unless we were willing to compromise on any of those requirements, I think they're pretty complete and comprehensive. How long would it take not to go to RFP, but to get quotes from the two other vendors. Now, granted, it may be a waste of time because they may not fit one of those requirements. So how long would it take, and what risk would be, or what downside would we have if it took 2 weeks of waiting 2 weeks?
Well, I have to be honest, the quote we have from Harris is a fully engineered system, and what I mean by that is that they brought their systems engineering folks in, and they ran propagation analysis, and they went and looked at the sites, and they determined, frankly, where the third site should be, because I want to point out, we haven't talked about this, it's a 3-site system as opposed to the existing 2-site system. So that process started in November, and we had their proposal from them, the first cut at that proposal in February. So we're talking 5 months to get that proposal. Now, again, we weren't pushing them, so they maybe could have done that proposal in 3 months. So if you really want to compare apples to apples, you need to have fully engineered proposals. So we could get a quote, and I think we've gotten a couple on the fly. And frankly, I talked to Motorola about giving us a quote. They called and asked if they could, and I told them that they could, but that we were, looking to move this. So to fully engineer it, it's going to take at least a couple of months. So the risk that we have in all of this, and I'm trying not to use scare tactics, but the risk we have is that our existing system is stable but has no backup. So the longer we delay this, the greater the risk becomes that if the controllers go down and we can't get another part, we have no radio system. That's the risk.
Donna, just to follow up if I could, two quick things. I just want to be clear about something that you shared, Rayanne. If we choose Harris tonight, though, we are still talking about 9 months to a year before that system will be fully deployed, that we're going to deal with this risk issue that we're talking about. I just want to be sure that the public understands that. It's not like Harris is going to come in the door and by September 15th, we've got a new system and the risk. So the reason I point that out is that risk exists regardless of what
Right.
we do tonight.
Right.
So adding some window of time to hear from other vendors, in my opinion, doesn't significantly alter that risk. That risk is there. And I just want to make a point that I see Bruce shaking his head about this fully engineered deployment time thing that you're talking about. And I know it's probably not appropriate to hear from him tonight, but when I see him shaking his head, I think he disagrees with that assessment. It raises my concern again that I want to hear from him before I say this concept of fully engineered systems takes 5 months. I'm not seeing that.
Other counselors have comments? Counselor Cocken?
Just a quick follow-up, just to where I am. I want to compliment town staff and our consultants on the amount of work that they did. I came into tonight, we've received probably 5, 6, 7 emails a day over the last several days. And, it was a little overwhelming, and they put together a nice binder, which we had on our seat when we got here tonight. And I think ultimately, I may support where you're going, but I really personally need some time to absorb what we've heard and go through all the material that we have here. So I might as well make a motion. I'd like to table this, and make a motion to table this until the next meeting, and for the purpose of just having a deeper understanding of what we've heard and what we need to absorb, and maybe some questions that we haven't asked. So it's a motion, Mayor.
You have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion about the motion to table?
I have a comment.
It's the motion and second has been done.
Okay.
It's a non-discussable
Right.
motion.
Okay.
So, Donna?
It has been tabled. Sorry.
We didn't vote on it.
Till the next meeting.
We have to vote on it?
To vote on the table.
I'm not getting it.
We have the motion and the second.
We can't discuss it, but we have to vote on it.
All right, all those in favor of tabling the motion?
Aye.
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 Aye as well. Opposed?
Aye.
Can we have a roll call vote so we're clear?
Do you want to do a roll call,
A
Dolores?
vote to table. Counselor Drake?
No.
Counselor Hurley?
No.
Counselor Kotkin?
Yes.
Counselor Manousos?
No.
Counselor McAllister?
No.
Counselor Montanari?
Yes.
Counselor Roberts?
Yes?
Deputy Mayor Council?
Yes.
And Chairperson Hemmon?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a vote.
Not to interrupt, but why couldn't we have discussion?
That's Roberts, it's Robert's Rules of Order.
And you
It's a
have-
non-discussable motion.
If we wanted to continue talking about it, we had to vote no.
Right.
That's why I voted no, because I want to continue talking about it, but
But there was a motion.
but someone put a motion out there a little early, so.
I mean, unless, John, you change your mind, you can.
The next item, the lease agreement, authorization for the town manager to negotiate. This would be a move to table as well.
Move to table, please.
Let's table it till next time.
Right.
A motion to table that motion till next, our next meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Oh, we can't.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Why can't we discuss this? We can't discuss that either?
It's a motion to table.
Because it has to do with the other motions.
It's contingent on the first item.
Who was the second?
I was the second on the motion to table the second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
No?
Abstentions? Number 4, bids, award of bid for the purchase of a natural gas Honda Civic. Do I have a motion?
Just trying to catch up down on the screen here. There's a lot of paper in between.
I'll make a motion to award a bid for the purchase of a Honda Civic natural gas vehicle from Manchester Honda in the amount of $23,995.
Second?
Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Included with the 2014 budget is a Honda Civic, which we received a grant to pay for a portion of the vehicle. Staff recommends approval. It be used with our natural gas filling station for $23,995.
Any questions? Counselor Roberts?
Yes, there was somebody in the audience earlier, a Boy Scout actually, who was here observing, and he asked what year vehicle we were going to buy. I assume it's a 2013 or 14?
13.
Okay, I just want that on the record because he did ask me that. Thank you.
Any further questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Next item is 4B, the change order, approval of a change order to the architect's contract for the Weathersfield High School project for redesign services.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize a change order in the amount of $185,825 to Quisenberry Arcaria Architects LLC.
And a second?
Second.
Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. The architect has submitted 2 requests for additional design services, which total $185,825. The services include redesign of the HVAC systems due to the building committee, elimination of the geothermal well system, redesign of the auditorium to eliminate the mezzanine, and make a bid add alternate. And lastly, the redesign interior walls, which were to remain but now must be replaced due to finding PCB contamination. These design services were discussed verbally in May to allow the designer enough time to make the changes and incorporate them into the plans and cost estimates for submission to the staff on July 16, 2013. Staff requests a change order in the amount of $185,825 to Quisenberry Arcaria Architects in accordance with the 2 attached letter requests. The building committee approved these change orders on July 8th. The construction manager included these design change fees in the budget submitted May 31st, 2013. So those costs are included. In the memo you had on the podium tonight, there is an email which describes the nature of the additional services requested herein. Be happy to answer any questions. Mike Turner and Chairman Fortunato of the Building Committee are here this evening.
Do any councilors have questions? Councilor Drake?
Usually the architect has to design to build to our cost estimate, and he has to keep designing until we get there. Is basically the PCB so far out of that scope that that's beyond that? I wouldn't necessarily would have thought that, but I can kind of understand it. But you know, I've never seen over the years a architectural change orders, to tell you the truth, on projects we've had.
They're gonna redesign significant pieces.
Well, no, I understand, but is it due just because the PCB is not found, a contract doesn't cover that?
That was one of the three components that necessitated this change. When the building committee did their value engineering, it was determined that the geothermal system, for instance, was eliminated. Well, the building still needs to have heat and air conditioning, so we needed to design replacement systems. The PCB discovery, which was much more extensive than was ever anticipated, required, for instance, walls to be taken down. You know, when we originally were anticipating, you know, removal of caulk, for instance, around a window, now we have to look at removal of caulk and brick substrate that supports the windows. So all of these are increases in the design costs and additions into the bid plans and specifications that are above the architect's basic scope of services.
Yeah, I would just add, and of course, Rusty is here, our architect, so I'm certain that he can answer questions that you have, but we have to keep in mind as well that we've broken this project into phases. So the amount of design work and what's needed from the mechanical consultant, for example, his consultants on the project, it's just additional work that has to be done. And again, the phasing, the breakdown is as a result of the PCB issue.
The PCB thing, as long as it's understandable that it was due to PCBs. But his responsibility, and again, you've done a great job on that, but your responsibility as your fee is to design the high school to meet our budget, and you have to design it over and over and over again until you get there. But I will give you that, the PCB is probably outside of your scope to make changes for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
Just one quick one, Donna, about the mezzanine piece. Christine, we're still up in the air about whether that feature will be, in fact, in the final project, correct?
True, it's being carried as an alternate.
It's converted to an alternate right now, but the decision about it going or going out is based on, I assume, a cost issue that's coming up in response to these increased bids?
Well, yes, as the bids come in. We haven't completed the bid process, so we'll have to see where we're at with finances.
So we're sort of like in this little circle thing. We've got to spend $40,000 to redesign it without the mezzanine. Not sure if we're going to use the mezzanine. Why can't we wait until we know if we're going to take it out, rather than spend $40,000 to come up with a design without it?
The design work is necessary to go to the state with our plans to be able to get approval to be able to put these bids out on the street. So the
With or
design
without?
work is
We have to have
necessary.
both options to go out.
Right. So we have two plans, if you will, so that we're prepared.
Any other questions? Deputy Mayor?
If I may, just a little bit different kind of question, but on the Munis year-to-date budget worksheet that was in our package, under contingency, 59,250, we had an original appropriation of $6.9 million. And am I correct that 2.7, almost $2.8 million has been used so far to the contingency to date?
We're going to ask Laurel Purcell, our construction manager, to come up and address that question.
If it's okay, can we waylay the contingency discussion, because I actually have an estimate. I'm going to walk you through this Munis report so that you understand where the dollars are going, as opposed to just picking on this one line item. Just so that you're aware, this cost that Rusty has is incorporated into this report, and it's
Okay.
actually under the contingency of $59,250 under the professional services. So there's a contingency that's further down on the page that shows up as $295,067.
Right.
If you see that. So I can walk you through what's in these numbers, and I actually was planning on doing that.
Okay. And the end result, you'll give me what the contingency balance is?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions on this? Okay, we have a motion to authorize a change order in the amount of $185,825. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Next item is the award and reject bids for the Weathersfield High School Phase 1 work. A motion?
There's the motion.
It's on page 36.
Motion to accept the colossal bid withdrawal for bid 1.02 site work, to reject all bids for site work and rebid this item, to award bid 1.03 concrete for additions to Waterbury masonry and foundation in the amount of $481,700, to include the base bid and alternatives 2 and 3. To award bid 1.04, structural steel for additions to United Steel, Inc. in the amount of $942,000, to include the base bid and alternatives 2 and 3. That's a mouthful, so somebody's got to explain all that one.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Phase 1 of the project includes site work, steel, and concrete for those pieces of Phase 1. We bid the 3 elements, 3 bids were received, bids for each of the 3 pieces were received. The low bid, Colossal, has withdrawn their bid for the site work. And the next highest bidder was beyond the budgetary estimate. The other 2, concrete and steel bids, came in within budget, and tonight we're recommending you accept those concrete and steel bids and reject or accept the withdrawal of Colossal as a bidder and then rebid the site work. And Laurel Purcell is here to further explain that. Or Mike Turner.
Just before, it was pointed out during our review that the bid for the concrete for additions, the total 481,700, that's actually a typo. It's 482,700.
And
I apologize for that.
And as a follow-up, in the packet on your podium tonight shows the bid tabulation with the alternates identified, given text to them, and the original budget estimates for those items.
I would like to hand it out, a bid tab. It has the budget on top, or is that what you already gave them?
That's what
You've already provided them with that?
No.
There should be a budget amount on the top.
Did you provide it? I don't have it.
For
What's the
those,
amount, 700,000?
for those who, I went to last night's meeting, and I asked Laurel, to try to put the budgets up against it, so you guys had a feel for where they were.
Is this already in our packet?
Original sheets.
No, I don't need another one.
Oh, it's in our computer. Is it in the computer? Let's see it. Let's see it. It is right there.
This one is the end.
I'm sorry, I dozed out for a second. No, I got it. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so, just to discuss the rebid of the site work, what we'd like to do is go out and rebid the site work in 2 weeks, be back in front of you at your next meeting to recommend the lowest site bidder. And as far as the 2 low bidders, the concrete, you'll see by the bid tab sheets, we were able to get 6 concrete bidders. They ranged in prices from $453 on the base bid up to $669. We did meet with the low bidder. We have plenty of experience working with them on school projects. We know that they understand the scope of your project, so we say that they're the lowest qualified responsible bidder. And for United Steel, we had 5 bids, and they were also the low bidder. We met with them. We compared tonnage with what we carried, and also General Welding, the second bidders for steel, to make sure that that was adequately covered. So we're recommending to approve the two lowest bidders. And the idea with the alternates is that when we write the contract, these two alternates are for these entrance canopies. When we actually write their contract, I'm gonna put the language in that the owner reserves the right to delete these two alternates by December 1st, so that this way, when all the bids come in, and we're anticipating bids coming in October, you can, the building committee will be able to make an educated decision with whether or not to proceed with awarding these alternates. But what we want to do is we want to award it now with the base bid, because if you don't award it now, it would be considered a change order, and we don't want any change orders with the, we want to minimize the amount of change orders with the state. So we'll put language in there so in case there's an issue and you want to back this out later on this year, once the rest of the bids come in, we'll be able to deduct the costs. And I don't know if anybody has any other questions on these bids.
In layman's terms, can you just explain to me, because I'm a little confused, what happened with the site work bid?
What happened with the site work bid, you probably didn't get those bid tab sheets. We had 5 site bidders. The low bid, this Colisale, as you had heard, those bid results ranged, his low bid was $6,333,000. The second bidder was $7,898,000, and it went up to the high bidder of $10,866,000. Our budget for the site work is $6.6 million. So our second, with the low bidder backing out, the second bidder is $7,898,000. It is too far over what the site work budget is allowing. So what the building committee, what we've done in the intermediary processes is we looked at the site scope. We met with the second bidder. We collaborated. We came up with some ideas with how to reduce costs. Now that the bids were in, we could identify some big items. And when we rebid it, we're actually going to be reducing some of the scope. So we're reducing scope and going back out in the street.
What's the scope you're reducing?
Let me see. I got my list over there. There's a whole list of them. There's about.
So reducing the number of plantings.
Yes.
The fence near the cooling tower.
Yeah, we have a total list that we've identified.
Benches.
Yep, we're using extruded concrete curb in lieu of cast in place. We're reducing the bleacher scope of work. We're replacing all the bleachers, but in the design that had went out, we were actually increasing the capacity. So what we're doing is we're decreasing the capacity of the bleachers back to the existing capacity. So they're not getting less than they have now, they're just not getting more.
The status quo, but new bleachers and ADA compliant.
There was also some masonry piers that, with an ornamental fence going down to the field, that was going to be a very nice entrance down to the fields. We're going to make that an ad alternate. Some of these are not going away. They're actually going to turn into some ad alternates. So when we come back to you with the site bids, instead of just being 2 alternates on the table, there's going to be probably 9 alternates on the table, because we don't want to totally eliminate some of these items. We want to make them ad alternates. And we'll probably do the same thing. We'll award them with the site bid. Then when the rest of the bids come in October, if we can't afford them, we take them back out.
And the original lowest bidder, I mean, maybe I missed something. Why are they backing out of the bid?
They wrote a very legalese letter, which was that part of their packet? Or no? Their withdrawal letter?
They made a mathematical error in their calculation.
They claim that they missed their project management costs that didn't carry forward in their Excel spreadsheet. So they gave this whole written explanation of why they missed their number. And had they not missed this number, they would magically be about $50,000 less than the second bidder. So it was that type of letter.
Thank you.
We've, if I might, Madam Mayor, we ran that through the town attorney, and they used the appropriate words in the letter in accordance with the statute that would allow them to withdraw without penalty. So all the necessary words were in the letter.
Yeah, all rights and, they had the legalese in there. You could tell they saw counsel before they wrote the letter.
If I may, when you put the alternates in, is there, oh, never mind. Never mind.
A title for them?
No, I got it. It's down the bottom. You had a question, somebody had a question?
Yes.
Councilman Newsis?
So how does this fit into the timeline for submission to the state?
We've already
reimbursement?
been up to the state, so this does not, this is just delaying the start of construction. We were actually supposed to be starting our site construction August 21st. So what this will do is this is going to push us back approximately a month for starting on site. So now I'm looking at a site construction start of September 18th. And if we can get the contract executed quicker than that, again, I'm going to ask at your next committee meeting or your next town council meeting on the 12th to approve that site bid. So as fast as we can get the contract executed, insurance in place, they will show up on site. But usually I allow about a month for all the paperwork to happen. So as soon as you approve them, they'll get the notice to proceed the next day, and then we go through all the processes to get them going.
So you're putting this back on the street when again?
Thursday, I plan on doing it, on
And
Thursday.
with a return date of when?
August 8th, 2 weeks. And I've already let all the bidders who bid us the first time, and we did lose a couple of bidders. I mean, we were competing against other projects at the time, plus the holiday. Our bids were originally due July 11th. So there are a couple of other bidders who have indicated interest in participating in the second round of bids. So hopefully we'll gain a couple of other bidders that didn't partake the first time around.
Thank you.
Question.
Counselor Hurley?
So the budget item seems like it was pretty much way off.
Yes, yes. yeah.
So are we gonna continue to run into this as we go through this project? If that was way off, did we under budget the whole project?
No, what's going on is the site numbers, when we met with the site bidder, this was, I don't want to say a perfect storm, but the price, you're not getting cheap site pricing anymore. The pricing of site work is going up, and they told us right in the meeting, there's 25% on it, whereas normally they were doing 10% before for any sort of profit. So the time of getting cheap site numbers, we're competing with too many school projects on the street right now, and people are getting work. There's a lot of work out there right now. Over the last 3 months, it has just turned around with the site. You'll see with the concrete came in way under. Structural steel came in a little over, but between the concrete and the steel, we're $90,000 under between those two packages. So obviously, I'm going to use that $90,000 right towards the site. When we get all the bids in October, we're going to get about 20 bids in one shot. And as you go down trade by trade, there's going to be over and unders, over and unders, over and unders. But it's how you come in at the end of the day.
No, I get that. This one just seems so far off that I'm concerned that some of the others could be so far off too.
The
when
only
they come in.
the only other trades that we would have that we are aware of that prices are increasing is HVAC and electrical. And we're going to take the time between now and when we go out to bid for the rest of the project to take a hard look at those two particular scopes to make sure we're cutting numbers down now. So those are our other two items where we want to make sure we've got ourselves covered for that, HVAC and electrical. Because we're able to look at how bids have come in recently.
And the site work, you said September 18th. Is that going to have any interference? School will be back in session. How's that going to play out?
We were going to be starting August 21st, so we really only had a week before they were coming back anyhow. I've got a solid month of temporary drive work that has to be done, and it's basically after school. They have to just avoid the buses. So we were going to be working around the school anyhow. It's just before I was starting August 21st, and I had about a month's worth of work. Preparatory work, getting ready to put the fences up and all that. Now it's purely starting September 15th, so we missed them being there, but it's not affecting them.
Okay.
They know they understand this is an occupied school. The school operates first.
Yeah, the superintendent and principal have been in our meetings. We had a conversation last night, and you should, I'm sorry, Mr. Rowe. Excuse me. At our meeting last evening, we spoke with the principal, and we're in constant communication with the superintendent as well to make certain that this will not impact the school schedule in any way. But bottom line, the end date of the project has not changed. We are not off schedule. We are still planned to be on schedule.
Right. Counselor Roberts?
Is it possible, when you mention legalese, I love, my ears pick up, is it possible to get a copy of that letter from Colossal or whatever
Sure.
they are? I don't know how to pronounce your name correctly.
Colasale.
Colasale.
Counselor Cochran?
pull this off?
This has to do with the two bids that we're likely to award tonight. And I'm taking a look at the Munis report, and I'm comparing against the ONG budgeted amount, and then I'm taking a look at what the actual bids were. So if I take a look at the steel in the Munis system, it looks like it's about 730,000, I think, if I read that correctly, steel structural phase 1, Weathersfield High School. And then I see ONG budgeted amount 700,000, and then if we award the base bid and the two alternates, it's about 942,000 total?
Yes.
Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Okay. And if I look at the concrete phase 1, Weathersfield High School, it looks like the Munis says 948,000, ONG budget amount 630, and then the bid that it's proposed that we accept is 483.
It should be 482,700.
Okay, okay, all right. So when you say that between the two, I guess we're 90 under, that's compared with what's in the Munis system? Is that it? As opposed to what the ONG budgeted amount?
No, the Munis system is devised from the ONG budget, so I handed you out tonight the ONG budget. And this will, the ONG budget, this estimate that we've been doing, we've given you 3 estimates. This is what is controlling the budget of the project. So the Munis system is taking information from our budget and reiterating it in the town's computer system, but the ONG estimate is what's controlling the budget numbers. So just to run through the ONG estimate, if you were to go down to page, and I'm just going to talk about these 2 specific trades, page 4 of my estimate, and you'll see the concrete there, that 948,647.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll see down below, there's a metals there of 729,954 in the new additions. The Munis system is completely reflecting these 2 line items. However, when we say the budget for when we go out to bid, we actually had escalation contingency that's not in these numbers in our estimate. Okay, they're on the front sheet, and I'll show you where that is. So what we do is we actually, we allow for some escalation, and some of this work that's in the new additions that we saw on drawings that were new additions, were not bid right now. They're not part of phase 1. In other words, the loading dock that's considered new construction is not being bid right now. Some of the what was considered new work on the drawings from an estimate standpoint was actually not part of this first bid. So we know we have some more concrete coming in phase 2. So I have to back out of this value what we think phase 2 from phase 1 is worth. So the Munis is merely mirroring the amounts of money that we're carrying in this estimate. And again, I gave it another 2% for escalation, because that's what we're allowed to do. So so does that answer your question with why my estimate budget number is different than Munis? Because our numbers, Munis is just trying to copy us so that there's one reporting system, but we're the ones driving the budget numbers right now.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out how you said that we're, between the 2 bids, 90,000 under. I'm just trying to figure out how you're getting there.
Okay.
Oh, between the 2 bids,
Yeah.
they had a number of a budget estimate, say it was $100,000. So we're $90,000 under the 2 combined budget estimates.
Right.
So,
So you saw the 629, 986 on top, right?
yep,
Okay, so if you take 453 off of that, I'm only counting base bid.
yeah.
That savings plus the 700,000 to 786 is actually an overage. The difference between those numbers is a $90,000 savings overall. We were so far under with the concrete. Oops, sorry. That's just those numbers,
Just
is how
those
I'm
two.
coming up with
Just those
90,000.
Just
2
those
bid
2.
packages.
Taking out the one you rejected.
Now, are you
Yeah,
including?
forget about the one rejected.
I'm sorry, with the steel, you're comparing, are you adding in the 2 alternates?
No, I'm just counting base bid because this number,
Sorry.
Munis and all these numbers are only base bid, they're not alternates.
Okay, all right. But you've taken that into consideration. So
Correct.
between these 2 bids, apples and apples,
Correct.
we're 90 under.
Correct.
And we're probably gonna need that on the site work and more.
So I would like to talk about this Munis report, because this way I would like people to understand. I know that you guys are just getting this report, and my estimate came back in May. So What happened in that whole transfers adjustments column, that second column in the Munis report, we met with our finance committee, I don't know, about a month ago, and it was voted on that in order to, we wanted the Munis system to match this last budget that we did. So if you look at the revised budget the revised budget column, which is the third line over, this is gonna exactly mirror the numbers that are in our estimate. So if, just take 709, 525 for the asbestos, you'll see it on our page 1, see the 709, 525. Is everybody seeing that?
Yeah, number 542, 630, the code, yeah.
Line 2A.
I'm on page 1 of our estimate, which is our summary. It's got asbestos abatement, 709, 525, and I'm on the Munis report.
Right.
Oh, I don't know what pages. I'm trying to walk you guys through this
Yeah.
so that you'll
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
what this
Yeah.
is.
Line,
You'll
the
know.
second line down.
Yes, and then the 2,011,975, which is the PCB abatement, I have under mine, PCB abatement, 1,911,975, plus the EPA SIP approval. This is just an allowance, it's all to do with PCB, so I just added those, she added those two numbers and she put them under that one cost code.
Okay.
The next item is the site work, 6,554,000. That number comes from my first number, which is site work, 6,479,125, plus the contaminated soils allowance of 75,000, which is line 2D, because I give this contaminated soils to the site contractor, so that's how she came up with those two numbers, or that one number. And the concrete, you saw further back. So, and then that big construction, she's just trying to match what's in our estimate. That's what all of this, so when you see the concrete started out as 0, now it's 948, she just created that line item. The dollars would have come from the construction phase 2 line, the 45 million. In other words, she's gonna start building that first portion as we get bids in. So when we go to bid the concrete, or the site, painting and the general trades, you're gonna start seeing a lot more line items showing up here that are all gonna start out at 0, and then they're gonna have some sort of a budget associated. So this is the Munis system, and she's just merely mirroring the costs that we're carrying. So the budget is completely covered. So when it comes to contingency, so you see the contingency line item under construction of 6,921,298, that has now been reduced to 4,141,243. That is consistent with my subtotal under escalation and contingency, that 4,141,243. So she's got it in one lump sum, and she's just showing a deduct. It didn't go anywhere, it just got distributed to other line items.
But so back to my original question. We have 4.1 million left in contingency.
Correct, and that consists of design estimate contingency of 520,000, escalation of 717, and then the construction contingency of 2.9.
Okay, so I got it clear. We started at 6.9, we're down to 4.1.
Correct, that's construction contingency.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
There's another contingency. There's an owner's contingency.
Understand.
Okay. So when you see in all these pluses and minuses and transferrings, she just did a major overhaul of what she was carrying to match our estimate. And you're only getting this piece, so you're looking at it, it's like, what are all these numbers? So I just want to make sure that you understand what was going on with all this.
The owner's contingency is not on here, right?
It
Where
is
that?
on there, and
Where is
it is down at the very second page. It's the very last line item. And it's showing up as $643,629. And that's the one place where we do deviate, because if you look on my spreadsheet on page 2, I have owner's contingency of $397,535. But if you look at this, I'm on my page 2.
No, I'm looking at the report she's looking at.
Their page 2, bottom line.
397, okay.
Yes, but I was showing us under budget, so if you take the 397,535 and you add 246,094, you're gonna come up with 643,629. That's the other contingency, that's there.
You don't look at the Munis page.
Okay, thank you.
Laura, could you explain that 948 again, on concrete phase one? Basically, the phase one was created new, so that's where it's zero again.
What was the question? What was the last part of your question?
The concrete phase one, you didn't have that at the beginning, so that
Oh.
was zero, so you took it from the phase two in the future, that's the 948
The,
came from?
the zero is only showing up because she just created the line item
Right,
in the
because
system.
Right, because the phase one we didn't have before originally.
Yes, yes.
So then 948, actually, somewhere along we have phase two concrete that's gonna come out of that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's fine.
That's why we can't spend it all now.
Any other questions?
So, yeah, I have one more question. Is this the format we're gonna be seeing subsequent budgets and work in? Yeah.
Once we start on site, once we actually are out there working, we are gonna give a construction manager's report, which is much simpler, I think, to understand as far as, we have a whole, cost code where all the trades are, what the potential change orders are, and it's usually a 2 or 3 page document. So I think it'll be much easier to read, and it'll be in one whole report that we produce.
So will it be as simple as budget, total expended?
Yes,
Yeah,
budget,
okay.
proposed revisions,
Yeah,
approved revisions.
This is like brain
total
surgery
amount
here.
that's left.
Yes.
Yes, this is the town's accounting system.
Right.
It's not meant to be user-friendly, it's an accounting system. We will give you an easy-to-read, easy-to-follow budgeting format once we start.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, we have the motion to award and reject the bids for the high school project Phase 1 work. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
Can I just add one thing? We did receive our letter from the state of Connecticut from the school construction projects that we are going to be reimbursed. So they have authorized the project, authorized reimbursement at a 50.710 reimbursement rate. So whatever we spend, we'll get 50.710 back.
Is that better than our estimate?
I don't know, what was the estimate?
I
About the
think
same.
we were anticipating 40-50%, so
Yeah.
we should be right on.
And Linda Savitsky, the interim finance director, is working on submitting reimbursements now for the expenditures we've made so far.
Next is 4D, the award of bid paving of Jordan Lane Extension. Can I have a
I'll motion
please?
to award the bid for the reconstruction of Jordan Lane to General Paving and Construction in the amount of $323,223.
And a second?
Second.
Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. The local capital improvement program dollars, LoSiP, the council authorized a resolution to apply its LoSiP dollars to the reconstruction of Jordan Lane Extension. The bid proposal that came back was $323,000. The memo talks about the current year allocation 188. We're actually not using the 188. We're using existing LoSiP funds in addition to the original $250,000 budgeted. So there's a spreadsheet in the packet I gave you this evening that shows what's available in our LoSiP account at the state. So there is sufficient funds available in addition to the money already allocated. There's $204,000 in addition to the $250,000 that's been allocated for LoSiP, so we won't touch the next year's allocation on this project. Staff recommends approval.
Do councilors have any questions?
Mike, when will this start?
They're prepared to start right away, actually. Our goal would be to have it completed before leaf season. You know, we start to bring trucks up there, you know, at the end of October. So we obviously want to be out of there completely by that time.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Number 5A, these are ordinances or resolutions for introduction for the next meeting. For hearings, the introduction of a resolution concerning an application to the state of Connecticut to obtain local capital improvement program LoSiP funds for milling and paving of various streets, and the introduction of a resolution concerning an application to the state of Connecticut to obtain local capital improvement program, LoSiP funds to reconstruct and pave Fairlane Drive between Grizzle Road and Fox Hill Road. Number 6 is minutes, the regular meeting of June 17th.
Motion to approve.
And a second?
Second.
Any corrections, additions, deletions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, thank you. The special meeting for July 1st. A motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any corrections, additions, deletions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions?
Was this a special meeting?
Special
Yes.
meeting.
I abstain.
Abstain.
I wasn't there.
The regular meeting of July 1st. Motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any corrections, additions, deletions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions?
You have
Abstain.
2.
I abstain too.
Okay, thank you. Next item is public comment. Are there members of the public wishing to speak? Mr. Seekis?
Mayor, may I just say that the bids, the introductions of the tonight's meeting will be heard on August 19th, because there's not enough time to get it in the newspaper and have 5 clear days.
Okay.
Lee Seekis, 117 Wells Road. If my memory serves me right, I was here when a lady representing Harris spoke. And I could swear, she said only 3 or 4 towns in Connecticut used the Harris system as of that meeting. Did anybody ever find out what other major companies are used by other towns in this state of 169 municipalities? That's what I'd like to know. The other thing was, when you were nice enough to read the members appointed to councils and committees, a lot of those names I recognize as being on those committees for years. I don't think you should say were appointed, you should say remaining, because you might confuse people as who's who on committees, because remaining on a committee and being an appointed committee are 2 different things if you've been there for 20 years, like several of those people named were. And the third question was, if I could remember what town manager said about stop signs, they're not used for traffic control?
Speed control.
Speed control, okay. Well, not traffic, but speed, okay. I cancel that question, that comment then. Because really, if they weren't used for traffic control, why even have them? I thank you.
Mr. Colantonio? And then Mr. Marcus?
Gus Colantonio, 16 Morrison Avenue. I just want to make some comments. Colosal did the job. It's $1.5 million less than the second high bidder. The question that I have, are they going to be allowed to bid again when it goes out?
Yes.
It's kind of nice, I guess. You bid, there is too much of a discrepancy, you leave $1.5 million on the table, says, hey, I get out of it. And a comment was made that basically the site work that came in was very high. I guess, the site work prices are increasing. And when I look at the site work requirements of who does the site work, it's a lot of laborers, non-educated. While you go to concrete and steel, where it's much more specialized, I would like to think that basically steel and concrete would be more expensive, and it will go up instead of the sidewalk, but anyway. And we have already spent 1/3 of the contingency before the project is really done. I think it's a lot. Going back to the stop sign, arbitrary decision, which I said it before. Traffic, I don't believe it. 37 years working. Traffic, not the only criteria for stop sign. Otherwise, why would we have intersectional sight distance? Why would we have stop in sight distance? There's a lot of things that come into play when we come up with a stop sign, not just traffic. And talking about traffic, if we have 750 cars and we do not deserve a stop sign, why do they have 2 stop signs on Orchard Street that has 360 cars? I don't understand. Since this job was complete, the sidewalks now, 45 students or more, they cross at Tifton. That's the worst part on the street. The fact still remains that basically we have 232 feet intersectional sight distance from Tifton looking up. And the required for 25 miles per hour is 280. So right away, we have less than what's required. That's the posted speed of 25. But the 85th percentile, it's 31 miles per hour. Okay, that means that 15% of the cars go faster than 31. Now, how would you like to defend if something happens in that particular location? The posted speed is 25 miles per hour, but yet the intersection is not safe for that speed? I mean, I would love to be probably the lawyer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colantonio. Mr. Marcus.
I appreciated the staff's looking into our references. I just want to make a correction to a couple of things. We had no involvement with the Bloomfield system. That was a Motorola system that was pulled out. We do have trunked radio systems in East Windsor, Windsor, and Newington. And we have one operating in Cromwell that's used for most of the town. In fact, if you ever go to the Travelers Championship, that's what runs the Travelers Championship, has run for years. And we also do the Hartford Marathon trunked as well. You mentioned they're coming here, and we do their radios year-round. The one comment about Windsor, we did switch protocols in Windsor and made it the same as East Windsor and Newington. And I appreciate all the effort that you're going through to find out about this information. I've been doing simulcast since before Mr. Witt was hired at Trot, since 1970, for a little gentleman out of Hartford called Henry Zaks that ran the message center. And I only put in 3,000 simulcast transmitters across the country for the doctor's pagers back then when paging was in its fantasy. So I worked on simulcast, and we now run simulcast for the Manchester Fire Department and the South Windsor Fire Department. We just finished a job in Knox County, Maine, which is 10 sites of simulcast for fire and police. And in Hampshire County, West Virginia, and Morgan County, West Virginia, is going to be put in 27 sites of a product that's not even made in this country. It's made in Italy. We brought it in special. And it's capable analog and digital. So we know how to do simulcast. We know how to do trunking. And so just give us an opportunity. You'll see some numbers, and we need your cooperation to get the right numbers together so we can put apples to apples. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Marcus. Other members of the public wishing to speak? This item was tabled on our agenda, and it was courtesy. Mr. Marcus spoke at the beginning. I'm not sure.
Where is she from?
Harris.
Well, I think it's completely
I
appropriate.
think it's,
All right, that's fine.
If you let one person talk.
If
And
you
then
let one
we
talk, I
need
think
to-
you gotta let everybody talk. This is public comment.
okay.
Thank you. I'm Anne Marie Stanford from Harris Corporation. I'd just like to make a couple of points for the record, if I might, tonight. My proposal and my system design, engineering, pricing, et cetera, is now part of the public record. It puts Harris in somewhat of a non-competitive situation in that all of the information in my proposal is now available to anyone who wants to look at it, anyone who's providing another proposal. I'd also like to say that it's perhaps not going to be possible to make an apples-to-apples comparison of the two system proposals, because We are proposing a P25 Phase 2 system, which is the latest technology. To the best of my knowledge, Tate does not manufacture a P25 Phase 2 system. So you're going to be comparing one type of system against another type of system, and it won't be an apples-to-apples comparison. So I'd just like to make that point for the record, that it will not be an apples-to-apples comparison or system design. And there was mention tonight made several times of Marcus being a local company, and I'd like to just state that Harris is also a local company. I'm born and raised in Connecticut. Our office has been in Meriden, Connecticut for the last 25 years, maybe more, so we are local as well, and intend to stay here and continue on for the next 30 years or so. So our equipment is manufactured in this country, in Lynchburg, Virginia, and Rochester, New York. And I just wanted to go on record with those few points, and that I am a little concerned about my information being public record right now. So, thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public, Mr. Rue?
Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a very interesting evening, and I'm glad I came. Did I say 956 Cloverdale Circle? I forgot that, which is on where I live.
I think we know.
Yeah, you got that in your heads. It was a very interesting meeting. It beats anything that was on TV. A couple of things that I want to comment on have less to do with the radio system, but other things that have come to my attention that from a town's perspective concern me. And it has to do with the council agrees to make money available for a playscape to the tune of $52,000 to a private organization, I think. That's what the paper says. And I'm thinking back, a couple of years ago, I lobbied, maybe that's not the right word, I spoke to the manager about getting these PTAs off the government pages in the town calendar because they don't belong there. They're down there with they're with citizen groups and public citizen activities in the community, just like the Wethersfield taxpayers is. And I thought to myself, if I came to the manager and said, hey, I need $52,000 for this great project, would you lend it to me? He'd probably laugh me out of the office. And I'm a little, maybe not, maybe I'm missing something. I'm going by what's in the paper, Anyway, but it struck me as an unusual thing. Maybe it's not unusual, but it's just how it struck me. I find it hard to believe that somewhere in our charter that you can go lend $52,000 to somebody because they're not authorized to go out and borrow something that they need themselves.
Mr. Rue, I'm going to have the town manager explain because we did that before with the Little League field.
Yeah, I saw that you had done that. But again, the reaction was, maybe did it wrong that time too.
The money to fund is through a grant for
I understand
the playground.
But the $52,000, if I understand it correctly, even if it's only a relatively short term, are taxpayer funds, is that correct?
It's not a loan. What we're doing is actually purchasing the equipment in anticipation of the grant.
The town is purchasing the equipment.
We're doing this is a public improvement on public property. The PTOs traditionally have raised money on their own, whether through state grants or passing a hat or T-shirt sales or whatever it is. So the PTOs at all the elementary schools have historically raised money in some form or fashion.
And given that money to the town?
Given the money to the town or bought the equipment and had it installed for the town, and the town accepts that as public property.
Okay.
So everything's on public property and everything is owned by the public. The PTOs are, in this sense, an agent for us to build a playscape at an elementary school.
Because the town is basically making the purchases fundamentally, right?
Well,
With the help of the PTOs.
The town is the benefactor of the effort.
Okay.
And in this particular instance, in order to get this done before the school starts,
I understood
the grant was 6 months away, so we fronted the money.
It just didn't come across right. And the other thing that did jump at me with another article, for example, Kathy Bagley, she was lobbying for this thing, and I think that's Kathy Bagley of the Parks and Recreation, but they describe her as being an EWPTO member. And I thought to myself, here's a town staff, again, but she's lobbying for a town activity vis-à-vis a private activity. Am I saying that correctly?
She's our liaison to that group in this
All
project
right,
because
so,
of
all
the
right,
park
so
and.
she's in effect speaking for the town in this
Yes.
particular. All right, I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Now, the other thing, now I'm gonna have a little fun now. I thank you for that explanation. I can understand that. I understood, the new playscape will be state-of-the-art and handicapped accessible. That was Jeff's comment. I had a chuckle. I spend a lot of time at playscapes these days. As a matter of fact, I found other playscapes around town. And how do they become more, how does a playscape become not state-of-the-art? I look at those things, they're different from the things that I knew when I was a kid, but that was a long time ago. But when you use the term state-of-the-art and handicapped accessible, well, my little great-grandson goes clamoring around, and my God, I can't even keep up with him, and I'm not handicapped. So I think it's a casual use of words. And the other words that I hear all too often, everything we want to buy seems to say, well, we can't get parts for it. I look at a playscape, and I see, how does that thing become obsolete? How do you can't get parts? Like you can't get straps to repair the broken safety straps down at Mikey's place, which I've been wanting to comment on. You know, you just gotta go out and maybe the people at the town garage or our maintenance department, they gotta get down and figure out how to fix some of this stuff. And not always come up with the issues, well, you can't get parts, so obviously it's gotta go away. So enough said on that particular subject. A couple of things. Oh, all right, forget that part. I wanted to comment on some, Mr. Manousis, I'm gonna pick on you a little bit.
Sure,
You
why
come
not?
in tonight here, a lot of discussion on a very important subject to this town. You come waltzing in here just before the vote's taken, and you sit down and you vote no or something. You don't know what happened during all of these hours, I don't think. Or were you sitting someplace watching it on TV?
Well, if you understood what the no vote meant, the no vote meant I wanted to continue discussing it.
Yeah, but
So I could understand it.
All
because-
right. But in any event,
Right.
as I saw you busy voting, I thought, and then you.
But do you understand what the no vote represented?
Well, I did at the moment.
Okay,
I'm old
so
now.
now that you do you understand why?
But I thought it was kind of interesting, okay, that particular.
But now that you understand what the no vote
Yeah,
represents, are you all
I'll
right?
accept your explanation.
Thank you.
all right? But if you come in like that, it could be on more critical things.
Could be.
You gotta be careful, I like to watch. The only other thing is, another from a technical perspective, and I suppose this whole radio thing raises the issue of high-tech stuff going on in town. I happened to stumble upon the Memorial Day ceremony being replayed. It wasn't, I don't think it was even on Channel 16, it was on some other channel. But you know, with all of the high-tech talent, the money we seem to spend, I couldn't understand a damn word that any of those people were saying. I just couldn't understand it. It was like they were talking through megaphones or what, and I said to myself, here we spend tons and tons of money doing all kinds of stuff. And I'm very interested in that Memorial Day parade, as you will find out one of these days. I couldn't understand anything that was happening, so I just share that particular point with you. John, you mentioned blight on Ridge Road. And my ears went up, blight on Ridge Road, because there were some bad trees. I suggest all of you come down and look at your pond,
It's getting
your
worse,
open
George.
space.
It's getting worse.
And
Your
it's
pond's getting
it's
worse.
blight. I guess that's another one of my projects, to continue to bring that to your attention. It's a mosquito breeding hazard. It's an abomination. You've got trees that are hanging there waiting for it to fall and kill somebody. We had 2 deaths in Connecticut recently on trees coming down on people, and there's another one pending. Another one that's liable to happen, you know, and you've just got to take this. And when I see that nothing's happening here, nothing is happening, the only conclusion that I can arrive at is that my elected officials don't give a damn. Because it's beyond my comprehension to think that a project that costs, where's Mike Turner, less than $100,000 to fix, or somewhere in that range, in comparison to the millions that you want to spend, and you can't fix that up and make that an asset to the community instead of a blight. And I tell you, I've got the blight ordinance on my desk, and boy, does that meet the requirements of being a blighted area on about 29 different counts. So come on down and take a look at that. And I'd be happy to, I'd even be happy to make coffee some Saturday morning and have some donuts and give you a tour of the place and let you walk around there and be very careful where you stand and where you step. So with that, to compliment, I think the decision you made on the radio tonight was sound, and I applaud that.
Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, I've had a request to just talk about next steps of where to go from the decision to table. Are there, I'm assuming that people have further questions, will email Rayanne with those further questions. Would there be ability for, there's an issue with the next meeting and attendance on the 5th. Is there a potential for a meeting the last week of July
I won't be here.
at all?
I'll be back for the 4th.
Don't we have to have this decision done by the end of the month with Harris, or we're open to whatever, if we're gonna do it or not?
Shouldn't this have been part of the discussion? Why we should have voted no to continue discussing?
Nobody showed up, that's what concerns me. So, I mean, I don't know how many more meetings we need to have. Everything we talked about tonight was we've all heard before.
Correct.
I mean, it was good for the public, which is what we need to do, and we did it with the public before, but we've all heard these before, so it's not, nothing here is new. I guess we can keep going, but I'm just not sure why we put it off, but.
I understand why we put it off. I just don't understand why we had to do it at that point in time and didn't have 5 more minutes to talk about next steps rather than doing it at the end of the meeting, because half the people left already. So it's unfortunate. I think a little premature.
It is, and
stopping the
I will
discussion.
agree that I voted too quickly in looking at the reason of the motion to table was on the floor with a second, so to me, that ended the discussion, so.
So
and
what
it's
is the
my
time,
fault.
what's the timeline then that we have to meet before then?
Is the issue people won't be here for the next council meeting? Is that what the
Correct.
issue is?
Well, and current pricing expires at the end of the month.
Well, then you can just have the meeting without me, that's fine. I mean, if I'm not the only one not gonna be here, I don't wanna have it be detrimental to the town or to the price of the system, depending on what it ends up being.
Are there other people, are you available next week?
Is the 5th too late, though?
Mm-hmm.
The 5th,
She's saying next week.
29th.
The week
Oh,
of the
29th.
29th.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, is the direction we're looking to go, based on how people vote tonight, are we looking to get questions answered, or are we looking to decide to go out to bids, to more people? I'm not real clear on that right now.
But Jeff asked for more time to
Yeah.
read through the information.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
okay, that's fine. I
You've got a
agree.
nice
That's good. No,
set
fair
of
enough.
info. I wasn't able to review it all during the meeting.
And he made the motion,
enough.
so.
Fair enough.
And I
So-
would just might suggest to send some information to Jeff quickly, like tomorrow.
Bridges.
Yes, Jeff Bridges, of what we might need. We might have all individual opinions about what we need, but I certainly can give you what I'm thinking I would like by tomorrow, and then you can determine what, if anything, can be done before the next meeting.
Are people available next week?
What date again? 29th? 30?
Which,
29, no, 30, yes. I just got my glasses back on.
A month went by fast.
Was available tonight at 8 o'clock to talk about it.
The
Close
30th
the door.
would be good.
That's a week from today?
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, that's fine.
Could people make 6 o'clock?
Can we do 6:30?
6:30, yep. Okay.
If you have questions for Keith, can you get them to us, because he will not be here.
Who won't be here?
Keith.
Keith,
From Trop.
so is there a better day that he can be here?
Well, we're flying him back and forth.
Oh, it costs us
Keith, would
money.
you be able to be on a call, on a conference call that day?
Yes.
Okay, good. That works. Thank you.
So we'll set a special meeting.
And we can do that during
for-
the meeting? 30th, that's fine.
Pardon me?
we can have that conference in during the
Yeah.
meeting?
Yeah, why not?
We'll set that for 6:30 on the 30th for a special meeting.
Dan, are we not having a meeting the first week of August at all? Is that the idea?
Well, we are.
No, we're still having.
We're still having it.
Regular meeting.
It's just can't vote on this. Okay.
Because of the timing of the contract, we have to meet before.
Okay.
So the intent is to vote on it on the 30th, if we want to take advantage of the pricing.
To get the information for questions from counselors, if there are questions, and then resume the discussion on the 30th.
But there will be a motion planned on the 30th for a vote, and we
It
can
would
decide to table
likely-
it,
Mhm.
but there would be an expectation that we would want to make a decision to go forward and not to take advantage of the pricing that expires on the
Mhm.
31st.
Correct. Okay. How about a motion to adjourn?
Motion
So
to
moved.
adjourn.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
So as I understand now, Jules, if he made the motion to table it,